Welcome to Weekly Bible Study with Mora Bathsheba, where my mission, goal, slogan, and purpose is to put God back into our relationships. 1 Kings chapter 9 verse 7, "And Israel shall be a proverb and a byword among all people, from slave to Negro, to colored, to black, to Afro-American, to African-American, to Hebrew Israelite." How good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell together in unity. Psalms chapter 133 verse 1. Breaking the chains of mental and spiritual slavery with the Word of God. From Gentile to Christian Jew, to Jewish Hebrew, to Hebrew Israelite, to Hebrew. Come, and let us return unto Yah, for he hath torn, and he will heal us, he hath smitten, and he will bind us up. Hosea chapter 6 verse 1. Thus says Yah, do not start following pagan religious practices. Jeremiah 10 verse 2. Thanks for watching.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Praise the power of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yisrael, the creator of the heavens, the earth, the seas, and all that in them is. My Savior, my Redeemer, even the Savior and Redeemer of Yisrael. Almighty Yah, we come before you today seeking wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of your word, which can be found in the Holy Scriptures from Genesis to Malachi. And I thank you for the timeless truths found in your Holy Scriptures as we explore the lesson on why we hate God, a study in spiritual blindness, to choice to despise holiness. I ask that you open our hearts and minds to receive your word. Help us to see your faithfulness and to understand your heart for your people, Yisrael. We know that this topic can be complex and at times misunderstood. Therefore, I pray that you would quiet our own assumptions and preconceived notions. Help us to see these pagan practices through your eyes and to understand your heart, which values faithfulness and loyalty above all. I pray that this lesson will not just be a matter of non-actionable knowledge, but a transformative experience that deepens our trust in you. May every word spoken and every truth shared draw us closer to your heart, guide our discussion, and teach us to build our lives on a foundation of faithfulness to you and have a heart open to those who desires to serve you regardless of our differences. I ask you to open our eyes so we can see not only your goodness throughout this earth, but also in our lives, so we can seek you with a perfect and sincere heart. Unstop our ears so we can hear your words, which are your laws, that if a man walks therein, he should live. Continue to magnify the law and make it honorable. Continue to make the crooked things straight, and continue to reveal your righteousness to your servants, even your servants who are Morim, Morot, Nevi'im, and Nevi'ot. And I pray that they lean not to their own understanding, neither turn to the right hand nor to the left, but stay on you in truth, righteousness, equity, justice, meekness, and fear. letting you guide our feet, direct our path while helping us to eschew evil, thus keeping a wall of protection around us and our household. I thank and praise you. What's going on? I thank and praise you for all the blessings, mercies, benefits, and grace that you have bestowed upon all of your servants, even the children of Israel. For truly you've been good to Israel. For your mercies, Almighty Yah, your mercies, they endure forever. They're new each day, and I thank you for them. Selah. Shalom Aleichem. Kodesh Kodashim, and hello to all servants of the Most High Yah. Welcome to this week's Bible study class. I'm Morah Basheva, and my mission, goal, slogan, and purpose is to put God back into our relationships. Without God at the center of our relationships, we lose the holiness, righteousness, justice, and truth our lives need. As the prophet Jeremiah wrote, he says, thus says Yah, do not start following pagan religious practices. That's according to Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2. Also, the prophet Isaiah says, for look, darkness covers the earth, and deep darkness covers the nations. But Yah shines on you. His splendor appears over you. And who is the you? Yisrael. Of course, that's who the you is. Praise the mighty Yah. This light comes when we repent and return to him. It is my mission to return the children of Israel back to their Elohim, their God, the God of the Hebrews, by teaching them the true words of God. For far too long, our people have been burdened with the precepts and ideologies of man. This is why we hate our Elohim and have turned our backs on him for broken cisterns, these cisterns that cannot hold water. For we love the traditions of men, these unholy celebrations and holidays, unjust laws, unclean diet, unrighteous ways, mannerisms, behavior, speech, and style of dress. For those new to this path, a note on the name of God. My use of Yah is based on Psalms chapter 68, verse 4, and it says, sing unto God, sing praises to his name, extol him that rideth upon the heavens by his name Yah, and rejoice before him. Hallelujah. While the King James Version uses a J, the original Hebrew has no J and spells it with a Y. This is the same name we use when we shout hallelujah, which only means praise Yah. In Hebrew, God is also translated as Elohim, for he is the only true Elohim, according to Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 10, which says, Yah is the only true God. He is the living God and the everlasting King. Hallelujah. Our King never died. Our Creator never died, for he is the creator of the heavens, the earth, the seas, and all that in them is. But Christians and other religions of the world worship a dead deity. Our God is a living Elohim. He is the only God of the Hebrews, and any worship of anything or anyone else besides him, in front of him, or either after him is idolatry, according to Exodus chapter 20, verses 2 through 4, which commands us not to have no other deities before him. You shall not make for yourself a carved image, Israel. And we all know that the cross and the Jewish star are carved images that people hang around their neck or have displayed in their homes. You must not bow down to these carved images, nor serve them. For our Elohim is a jealous Elohim, Israel. Israel, yes, you, Israel. It's time for us to reclaim our heritage, our communities, our children, and our relationship with the Most High Yah, the God of the Hebrews. Israel is our name, not the derogatory names that have kept us from our identity. You know the names our slave masters called us and still calls us niggers, blacks, colored, and now also the names we call ourselves. African Americans, Afro Americans, Black Jews, Hebrew Israelites, FBAs, which mean Foundational Black Americans. By reconnecting with who we are as a nation, we reconnect with our culture, our heritage, and most importantly, the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Israel. The main focus of this channel is to help you renew or begin to form a new relationship with the God of our forefathers, the God of the Hebrews. We'll explore the Holy Scriptures to see how their timeless wisdom applies to our lives, our marriages, our families, our neighbors, and even our nation. Thank you for joining me. My prayer is that you all are well and ready to learn about our culture, customs, and way of life through the Torah and the ancient prophets of the Most High Yah. If anyone has any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the chat or the comment section down below this video. And please don't show hate to anyone at any time in the comment section. And if I can't answer a question now, I will either reply to it later or address your question on the next video. I welcome your questions and comments, but at the same time, please show restraint and don't disrespect anyone in the comment section or the chat. We can all agree to disagree. For all those new subscribers, thanks for joining and welcome to the broadcasts. And for those long-standing subscribers, thanks for the continued support. Also, I have a question and answer segment following the lesson so as not to interrupt the flow of the Bible study. And disclaimer, please beware that I am not all-knowing nor omnipotent. Therefore, some things are hidden by God, and He alone reveals the secret things to whom He pleases. And that's according to Deuteronomy chapter 29, verse 29, which says, the secret things belong to Yah, our God. But those that are revealed belong to us and our descendants forever, so that we might obey all the words of this law. What law? The Torah, of course. From Genesis to Deuteronomy. Hallelujah. Before I begin, I would now like to ask the Most High Yah for guidance, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of His words that can be found in the Holy Scriptures from Genesis to Malachi, and that it is not my intention nor my purpose to mislead, misguide, nor misdirect anyone off the path of righteousness. Hallelujah. So, the topic is why we hate God, a study in spiritual blindness, the choice to despise holiness. Now, why would you say why we hate God? Because our actions speak louder than words. We have turned our backs on the true and living Savior, the Most High Yah, for broken cisterns that cannot hold water. We follow behind these religions of these nations, and the Most High plainly and clearly and emphatically said in Jeremiah chapter 10, verse 2, to learn not what? The religious practices of these nations. Don't follow them. And we follow them. We are either following the Jewish nation, and they serve Adonai and Hashem. Are we following the Christian nation, and they serve JC? Point blank. So we either following one or the other. But who is following the Most High Yah? Who? Who is on Yah's side? We all should be on Yah's side. Hallelujah. So let's get into the lesson. I can't wait. Part 1, Introduction. The agony of the Holy One of Israel. Look around you. You see a world grappling with broken promises, shattered trust, profound disappointments, sin, evil, wickedness, and abomination. But imagine this heartbreak on a cosmic scale, on a profound level, spoken by the Creator to his cherished people. This same feeling can be equated with how he felt during the days of Noah. The heartbreak of God due to pervasive human corruption and wickedness, which ultimately led to the flood. The moral and spiritual decay we see today, it existed back then. Broken promises, shattered trust, profound disappointments, sin, evil, wickedness, and abomination are precisely the conditions that led up to the catastrophe. And we see the same thing now. Something has to give, Israel. Something has to give. All this wickedness and evil. I mean, it's fast. It's on a fast track. The Most High is not playing. It's judgment time. He is judging Israel. He is judging the nations as well. But he said we will be delivered out of it. A remnant. Everybody won't be saved. You got to come from among these nations and stop following them in their pagan religious practices. The days of Noah was a profound heartbreak for the Most High. His heart is breaking now. The foundational text that describes the condition of the world before the flood is found in the book of Genesis. It provides a direct parallel to the list of human failures. Pervasive sin and evil. Don't we see that now? A world grappling with sin, evil, wickedness, and abomination is captured explicitly and dramatically in Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. It was total corruption. Total corruption. Don't we understand that, Israel? Total corruption. And we following down the same path as of today. And we don't understand it. Yah saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. That's according to Genesis chapter 6, verse 5. And don't we see the same thing now? Same-sex marriages. These people, they don't know if they're a man or a woman. All these transgender, agender, all this bisexual, asexual. I mean, all this evil. A man want to be a woman want to be a man. What is going on? Widespread violence. Now the earth was corrupt in Elohim's sight, and the earth was filled with violence. Genesis chapter 6, verse 11. Don't we see that today? The same pattern, the same blueprint in Noah's days. This describes a complete breakdown of moral and societal order. A state where trust was shattered and promises were meaningless, leading to the ultimate abomination of violence. God's profound disappointment, heartbreak. Let's talk about it. Talk about his heartbreak. The most striking connection is how God reacts to this global moral failure. Heartbreak on the highest level. The highest level. Imagine it. The highest level. I mean, can we go any higher? That's why I said the highest level. Regret and grief. And Yah regretted that he had made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. That's according to Genesis chapter 6, verse 6. It grieved him that he had made man. And what did he say? He didn't stay in the grief. He said, I'm going to take care of this now. Judgment time. Like I just told you guys, it's judgment time now. This divine grief led directly to the decision to destroy all life on earth. So Yah said, I will blot out man, whom I have created from the face of the land. Genesis chapter 6, verse 7. It's judgment time, Israel. We being judged. That's why you see all this rampant racism, all this evil, violence, sin. It's judgment time. That narrative portrays God as deeply being wounded by the betrayal of his creation. Think about it. We are betraying God. He chose us as a nation. Back then, during Noah's time, those people betrayed him. Now we are betraying him. We despise the Holy One of Israel. We despise his laws, statutes, commandments, judgments, and ordinances. We hate it. We hate him. Our actions are speaking louder than words. He was deeply hurt by the betrayal of his creation, experiencing profound disappointment that necessitated radical judgment to cleanse the earth of its corruption. He's like, I gotta get rid of everything. Start back over again. He wanted to do it with Moses. But Moses said, what the other nations gonna say? You brought him out here to kill him. You couldn't deliver them like you said you could. I mean, rampant evil. The flood was a dramatic, godly response to a world that had completely turned to godliness. They turned their back on divine order and goodness. The narrative of Noah's generation serves as a powerful ancient precedent for the pathology of scorn that later manifested in the Hebrews' wilderness rebellion. We are not just observing history, we are stepping into the agonizing heart of God. In the declaration of Isaiah chapter 1 verse 4, and it reads, tells you what God says about us. They have forsaken Yah. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. This is the Most High saying this. Israel have forsaken Yah. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. Through our actions, Israel, our actions. We don't have to say we hate God. Look at how we behave towards each other, towards the earth, towards animals. We don't care. Somebody be driving, they throw trash out, littering the earth. They see an animal or run it over, or mistreat it, or shoot it. All kind of evil and wickedness. You see how parents turn against the children, children turn against the parents? No honor. It's dishonor. How long do you think the Most High gonna be quiet about that, Israel? We're gonna confront the agonizing heart of God's covenant with the children of Israel. This 2-hour journey delves deep into the tragic narrative of Israel's repeated rebellion, not as a historical footnote, but as a mirror reflecting the universal human tendency to betray divine trust. We will trace the profound disappointment of Yah as Israel consistently despised his sacred name, his holy laws, and his statutes. Think about that. Consistently, repeatedly despise the Most High's sacred name, holy laws and statutes, even the prophets he sent, his cherished land, and ultimately the very covenant he made with them, leading to their ultimate judgment and their desperate call to return. Through powerful Hebrew scriptures, we will uncover the devastating consequences of this spiritual contempt, leading to judgment, exile, and the agonizing question. And what is the agonizing question? Why do we repeatedly despise the very source of our blessing? Why? We constantly, repeatedly despise the very source of our blessing. The Most High is the one blessing Israel, not these other nations. This is not just Israel's story. It's a timeless indictment in a desperate plea for recognition of the Holy One. We have to acknowledge him and stop acknowledging all these other deities. The foundational challenge, what is that? Why do we despise what is most sacred? Why do nations, specifically Israel, repeatedly turn away from the very source of their life, their blessing, and their identity? We despise what is holy. We despise what is sacred. We want to be like the other nations. The prophets cry. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4. Hear the words of Isaiah, a lamentation echoing across millennia. They have forsaken Yah. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. They have turned backward. Backward, Israel. We have turned backward. This is not a casual observation. It is a profound declaration of a profound disappointment, a deep felt heartbreak at the core of a sacred covenant. So, what does it mean to despise the Holy One of Israel? Is it outright rejection or something more insidious, a gradual turning, a slow erosion of reverence? How does this despising manifest in our daily life, in our choices, in our neglect? And what are the inevitable, terrifying consequences when the people of God hold his holiness in contempt? And that's what we do. We care less about God. Care less about his people, his name, and everything. Even care about that land over there. There ain't nothing our land, not no people. We ain't no Jews. God never had no people called Jews. Nothing the Jews do say anything about holiness. It's the opposite. If the Jews doing, you should be doing the opposite. They don't know God. God don't know them. Throughout the Hebrew scriptures, the Holy One of Israel gave his people everything. His name, his law, his land. And we still didn't appreciate it. And ultimately, the very covenant he made with them, leading to their ultimate judgment and a desperate call to return. Yet they turn backward, consistently choosing to despise the very source of their blessing. Choosing consistently to despise it. Turn backward. That may not me. But we mean we can't cook on the Sabbath day? We mean we can't do nothing? Can't turn no TV on? I don't want to serve no God like that. How often do we, like ancient Israel, offer empty sacrifices while clinging to injustice and sin? How often do we scoff at the word of warning because it contradicts our current comfort and enjoyment? Often. We always do it because we want to be like the people. So we're going to embark on this confrontation with the truth, using the unyielding light of Hebrew scriptures to illuminate the sinful ways of the human heart. The question is not what God requires, but whether we have the courage to acknowledge the contempt we hold for the very holiness that offers us life. Offer us this life. So let's study begin. We're going to go from Noah's world to the wilderness, the timeless pathology of scorn. That's what we're going to talk about now. Put it on the screen. From Noah's world to the wilderness, the timeless pathology of scorn. So you get an idea. We'll talk about these two, the wilderness and during Noah's time. So the divine heartbreak experienced in the days of Noah, according to Genesis 6:6, was the result of a global, unrestrained commitment to evil and self-will. In the wilderness, the Hebrews exhibited the same core contempt. They didn't want to be led by Moses. Who made you a God over us? Want to stone Moses to death. Moses was scared. God, I ain't asked for all this. You people about to stone me for food. Some of those leeks and garlic and fish they had up in Egypt. So the Hebrews exhibited the same core contempt, the preference for their own desires, though fish and leeks over God's stated will, despite having just witnessed a miraculous deliverance. How soon we forget, Israel, how soon we forget the continuity of contempt. The fundamental act of rebellion is the same, the decision to despise the Holy One. Noah's world, people chose unchecked violence and evil continually over the voice of righteousness. In the wilderness generation, they chose the comfort of appetite, the leeks and garlic of Egypt, and self-rule over the cleansing and discipline of God's law and presence when they rejected his prophet and leader Moses. Didn't want to hear nothing Moses had to say once they got out of Egypt. We got it from him, Moses. We can rule ourselves. We don't need God telling us what to do. And we sure don't want you telling us what to do either. So bye, go. You still here, Moses? I thought we told you to leave. We're going to stone when you keep on sitting there telling us, Moses, about what God said. You made up those laws. We ain't going to do that. Shoot, we free now. Free to do whatever we want to. We was already in slavery in Egypt. They gonna come out here and be a slave to you? And this God you talking about? We ain't seeing him, so I don't know if he exists. Might be making that stuff up. You know us. In both cases, the spiritual contempt led to the rejection of a high-value blessing. Yes, a high-value blessing. I know you know of a high-value man, huh? You heard of that. So it led to the rejection of a high-value blessing, which is the covenant relationship with God, for a low-value counterfeit, temporary, self-focused gratification. Especially when they built that old calf up there. Man, this is our God right here that led us out of Egypt. Shalom, it's all good. Total Rabban, thanks for joining. See you target practicing. But yes, a low value counterfeit calf up there. That's what they want. We want something we can see. Moses over there, he might be making up stuff. He just lying. Ain't no way God telling us to do all this stuff. That's too many law. We didn't have all that stuff in Egypt. We're going to come out here and be subject to all that in the wilderness? You better go on, Moses. You know Miriam and Aaron had to join in. The law as the litmus test of a hatred. For the Hebrews, the law became the ultimate measure of their spiritual contempt. I told you, Moses making up them laws. Ain't no way in the world God told us to do all that. That was the litmus test of hatred, the law. While God intended the law to be that immunity system of the covenant, according to Exodus 15 and 26, they saw it as a chain. We're still in slavery. We're still in bondage. They saw it as a list of arbitrary restrictions. All this stuff we can't do. What can we do there, Moses? Every time I look around, you can't do that. You can't do this. You can't do this. What can we do? This choice reveals the definition of hate. In this context, it is not a screaming emotion, but a preference, according to Psalm chapter 119 and 113. Contemptuous preference. They preferred the familiar curse of their old life, which was bondage and slavery, over the uncomfortable cleansing of the wilderness journey, which God wanted them to be obedient and to have freedom from slavery. That's what the Sabbath is about. Freedom from slavery. That's the work. You're not supposed to be doing slave labor. Nowhere did it say anything about food. Preparing food was work. So when they complain about the manna, God's provision, or the pillar of cloud, which was God's guidance, they were signaling that God's presence was an interruption to their lives, not a refuge. This attitude of scorn caused them to turn away backward, according to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 4, facing the sin and bondage of their past life rather than the promise of their future. They'd rather go back in slavery than to be free under the laws of God. That's the ultimate despiser of God's laws. So part 2. All out of order. That just was disorder. Anything to be contrary to God. Hate God. Because their actions speak louder than words. Why we hate God? The unmasking of spiritual contempt. So, today we confront the raw, uncomfortable question that few dare to ask. Why we hate God? Why? It is the deep-seated impulse of the natural mind that prefers its own lawlessness to his law. It's our own darkness to his light. It's our own precepts to his statutes. And it's our own will to his holiness. So whatever God come up with, we're going to be contrary to it. He wants you to be in the light. Oh, I want to be in the darkness. I don't want to see the light. He want to give you his statutes. Oh, I want my own precepts. The precepts of man. That's why people are telling you can't cook on the Sabbath. That was the precepts of man. They can't show you nowhere what God said. And they want to go to the general thing when it said work. You need to go to the Hebrew and see what that work is. God told you specifically in Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15, what the work was he delivered them from. And if you go to the Hebrew, you will see it's only 2 types of work. And neither one of them encompasses cooking. I don't know why people blind and can't see and end up there teaching other people to be blind and can't see. So we want our own free will to God's holiness. We don't want to be guided by his laws. Don't come here with no law trying to tell me what to do. We free now. Moses come here putting us back in bondage. We free. Now hear me clearly. I am not speaking of a screaming conscious hatred, but a far more insidious, damning form of contempt. It is the deep-seated impulse of the natural minds that want to do whatever you want to do, contrary to what God wants you to do. This is not a historical observation. It is an indictment of the soul. We have the 3 acts of rebellion. Yes, that is 3 acts of rebellion. The first one is why we hate God. The word hate here is not an emotion. It's a preference. A preference. According to Psalms 119 and 113, we hate God's authority by choosing against his commands whenever they conflict with our desire. Yes, we do. We're going to choose our desire over his commands every time. Because we don't want him telling us what to do. We prefer the fleeting comfort of sin to the fierce clarity of his righteousness. We do. Number 2, a study in spiritual blindness. This is the condition that enables the hatred. The human mind, blinded by its own ego, cannot perceive the worth of holiness. According to Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 21. We substitute idols, money, power, self for the living God, truly believing our broken cisterns hold water. According to Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. The blindness, the spiritual blindness is not ignorance. It is a willful refusal to see the terrifying beauty of the Holy One. We don't want to see God as being the head of our lives. It's a choice, Israel. It's a choice. We refuse to obey. Number 3, the choice to despise holiness. This is the moment of definitive action when God's command is clear. When the path of purity is visible, we exercise our will to scorn what is sacred. We see his law as a constraint, not a blessing. His presence as an interruption, not a refuge. God telling us what to do, coming here, interfering in my life, trying to tell me what to do. So that is a profound observation that strikes at the heart of human resistance to divine authority. Our foreparents' wilderness failures and our present-day failures are tied directly to a timeless spiritual pathology. The human tendency to trade a high-value blessing, which is God's presence and His law, for a low-value counterfeit, personal comfort and self-rule, and idols. Part 3. Talk about these dumb dogs who make the law burdensome. Making the law burdensome, the yoke of human ideology. God never intended for His law to be burdensome. That's why I don't understand how people talking about you're supposed to be in the cold on the Sabbath day. You got to eat cold food on the Sabbath day. When you have a connection with the Most High, y'all, and you truly know Him, you start to question things like that. Wait a minute. Would a loving God want you and your children to be in the cold on the Sabbath day if you didn't turn the heat on? Think about that. Or somebody sick and ill sitting here, they cold and freezing on the Sabbath day? That just don't make sense. Some things just don't make sense. And people need to start questioning these leaders. They're afraid to call them out. I'm not. I fear God. I don't fear no man. God take care of man. He always took care of man. You got to start questioning this stuff. Israel, start looking into it yourself. Go to the Hebrew. See what the Hebrew say. Cross-reference with other books. I did it when it came to the Sabbath. And I found nowhere. Now, God, He made laws about everything else. About going in the field, buying and selling. All these different laws on the Sabbath day. But no law that said you can't cook. But then people want to put up on that general rule when it said no work. Well, why didn't God specify the other ones then? He specified what He said don't do on the Sabbath day. But when it comes to cooking, He just put that on generally on the work. And the work the Most High was talking about was slave labor. Today we'll call it economic gain, going to work 9 to 5 or whatever shift you have. Because we'll joke about it. I'm finna go up on the slave master now. He working me like a Hebrew slave now. I don't understand it. We're going to generalize work as cooking. But the Most High didn't do it. He was specific. During harvest and sowing time, you cannot go in the field and do that work. You cannot be building that type of work. No skilled labor, that type of work. So when you go to the Hebrew, you will see it's only 2 words for work, malaka and avodah. Neither one of them deals with cooking. So where they get this stuff from? I told you from that verse what I read. Moses told them, cook what you're going to cook today and boil what you're going to boil and seed, and etc., etc. Because you won't find it in the field. Why they won't find it in the field? Because that's the day, that's the Creator's day off. He rests on the Sabbath. Why would they say that? You won't find it in the field. Because the Most High wasn't going to rain no manna down. That's why. That was His day off. He's not going to break His own Sabbath. Remember, He rests on the Sabbath day. And man took that as a tradition. That's not a law. And they took it and not looking at it for what it is. The eyes not open to see. The Most High rests on the Sabbath. Why would they say all of this? Let you know they're referring to the Most High. You won't find it in the field because the Most High is not going to rain it down because that's His rest day. And then they still went out there. So it let me know, obviously, they didn't have a law about harvesting and sowing at the time. Because they went out there trying to gather it, and the Most High just stoned them to death. And that man picking up sticks, he got stoned. And people went out there looking for manna, they didn't get stoned to death. Moses, I got on Moses. How long? You refuse to obey my law. Moses, I told him, Moses, you get up on. I told him, don't go out there. They won't find it out there. I told them they won't find it out there. They just didn't believe me. I told you they didn't believe Moses. Moses just lying. Whatever Moses said, they did the opposite. Y'all better not be listening to Moses. Moses over there just lying. He making up that stuff. That's why they won't find it out there in the field. That's Moses' rest day. He rests. Why would he break his own Sabbath day? He rests on the Sabbath. That was work. He was provided all through the week. So he told them to gather that. And I didn't see and read not one time where the folks that complain about everything, Moses got us out here freezing us and our little ones and our children and our wives. You mean we can't warm ourselves on the Sabbath day, Moses? Not one time did I read it in there. I looked. Not one time. So I took off, and 2 weeks I was studying. And I still did some on the Sabbath day. I'm trying to get it all together, trying to organize it now, because it's going to take me a whole day and a half to put on the slides, because I'm going to make sure it's on the slides so you can see it. Screenshot it, go back and look it up, and go behind me and check behind me. Because, you're going to question me, but you don't question those dumb dogs. That's why every time I tell somebody something, I make sure I show it on the screen. Show you my resources, show you this or that. So you want me lying, saying, I'm hard about sure I made this stuff up. There'll be some people coming questioning anyway. That still ain't what that means. That don't mean you have to cook on the Sabbath day. Same thing about when the Sabbath day start. Some people still want to start it at night. When the Most High plainly said it's a day. He never connected a night with a day and a day with a night. They always were separate. That's why they have different names. So if you want to start your Sabbath on a Friday night, that's you. You can't get upset with somebody starting on the Sabbath day, actual day of daylight. So if you don't want to cook, that's you. Don't come to this channel thinking you're going to change my mind about what I read and what I'm teaching. You can still not cook. This past Sabbath day, I was doing my lesson about Sabbath day. I ain't had time to eat. I grabbed some pecan and kept it going. Stomach just yowling. Because when I'm working, I'm in the zone. I'm trying to get all of it organized in advance, because I know it's going to take a whole day and a half to put all that stuff on slides. So I said, let me go and get started now. So they won't think, oh, she ain't coming live because she can't prove it. Yes, I can. You just don't know the stuff I go through to try to put this stuff on the slides and try to get this lesson out. It's not easy, but anyway, back to the lesson. Making the law burdensome, the yoke of human ideology. And that's what man do. Psalm chapter 19, verse 8. Let's set this matter in order. The precepts of Yah are right. Yah now, rejoice in the heart. The commandment of Yah is pure, enlightening the eyes of Yah. But man, he come with his precepts. God's law, Yisrael, rejoices your heart and is enlightening. It is a roadmap to holiness, a clear, predictable path that keeps us immune from the curses of the world, the diseases of the world, the diseases of Egypt. But where's the joy, Yisrael? Where is the joy? Our forefathers were complaining in the wilderness, and we're still complaining today. Our forefathers turned their backs on God for the memories and idols of ancient Egypt, and today we have turned our backs on him for the worldly ways and idols of America, the modern day Egypt. Haven't learned our lesson yet. And the most damning thing is that these corrupt leaders, driven by their own insecurities, their own lust or desire for control, takes this roadmap and pile on extra demands, unwritten rules, made up laws, and personal traditions. I grew up like this. I was raised like this. They add human ideologies and precepts that create impossible standards that is hard to live by. That's why people talk about, we can't cook. That don't make no sense. We got to eat cold food. And that's why people kept asking over and over again, we can't have no crock pot. They was saying all this stuff. They couldn't go nowhere up in the Holy Scripture and show you nothing they said and verify it. And we said, thus says Yah. They was saying that. And by doing this, they accomplish two terrible things. They make the law seem impossible to keep. People become exhausted trying to please the leader's precepts, failing to realize the law's actual purpose is to guide and sanctify them. I mean, all these extra demands. And then they cause the people to hate God. People tell me, I ain't no Hebrew. You can't do nothing. Why would I serve God? I can't do nothing. I can't watch TV on the Sabbath day. I can't cook. I can't do nothing. And I was looking at some of these idiots was saying stuff like that when I was doing my research about the Sabbath day. And they just all misunderstood. Somebody, you just can't do nothing. You can't even go out and leave. They were taking all these verses from here and there, talking about when Moses told them to, remain there, don't go. They talking about, you can't travel on the Sabbath day. The credit would never told you have a holy convocation if you couldn't travel on the Sabbath day. And they come up with all these stupid precepts of man. I said, look at this. So they cause the people to hate God. And when the law is taught as a tool for condemnation, a heavy burden that crushes the soul, with restrictions on top of restrictions, the people naturally what? Resent the lawgiver. They associate the tyranny of the human leader with the perfect justice of the Holy One. The people end up abandoning the covenant, and not because the law is flawed, but because the leadership is flawed and has poisoned the teaching. If your understanding of God's commands, which are the laws, statutes, and ordinances, make you feel perpetually inadequate, resentful, and alienated, you must, you hear me? You must examine the teaching you are receiving. I'm going to read that again. If you, Yisrael, if your understanding of God's commands, the laws, statutes, and ordinances make you feel perpetually inadequate, you can't never measure up, resentful, and alienated, you must examine the teaching you are receiving. Who are you listening to? Who are you following? Who are you subscribed to? That's on you. The leaders are causing you to err. Are you serving the righteous liberty of God's word or the heavy yoke of man's ideological demands? Which one? The true law of God is a blessing and a path to wilderness. A path to wisdom. The true law of God is a blessing and a path to wisdom, according to Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 6. And anything else is a destructive deception that causes the people to err. That's why many of them are erring, causing them to err. And this leads to a profound spiritual danger for us. Why? Because you turn your back on God. They're causing you to turn your back on God. That's why. Let's talk about this yoke of man versus God's law. The contrast, the burden of man's yoke versus the glory of God's law. The reality is that your resentment, alienation, and perpetual unhappy spirit is with the human teacher who has burdened you with their own precepts and demands. Can't get angry with God talking about his law is like that. No, that's man misinterpreting God's law like that. Because nowhere in the law did God say, oh, you can't cook on a Sabbath day. He said other things you can't do on a Sabbath day. Why can't he voice that? He knew the ending from the beginning that we're going to have what? Questions about that. Disagreement about that. Have problems with that. He knew it. But the unwise leaders who lean into their own understanding are misguiding and misteaching the people. They are burdening them with their precepts. The heavy yoke of man's ideological demands are the ones that are leading us to err. So when the leaders trade God's statutes for their own precepts, the law ceases to be a roadmap. It becomes a crutch used for conformity. This approach is spiritually toxic because it does what? Creates exhaustion. Get tired. Not holiness. The ideologies of man are often based on money, power, social status, and endless laws. They impose requirements far beyond what God commanded, like not cooking on the Sabbath. Their focus shifts from the condition of the heart, which God requires, to the perfection of the outward appearance, which man demands. Man demands the outward. He wants you to look good. Come in with a certain appearance. It also breeds resentment against the lawgiver. So if a teacher constantly urges God's standards to if a teacher constantly uses God's standards to criticize, control, and are constantly beg for money, the student naturally begins to associate negative feelings with God. The commands are perceived not as the protective boundary of a loving father, but as the arbitrary, nagging weight of an unrelenting taskmaster. That's what it ended up being like. The commands are perceived not as the protective boundary of a loving father, but as the arbitrary, nagging weight of an unrelenting taskmaster. You can't ever please it. An unrelenting taskmaster. Never. I don't care how perfect you think you're doing something, it won't be perfect for him or her. It replaces truth with fear. Man's ideological demands are enforced by fear, fear of exclusion, fear of judgment, or fear of shame. People also fear being ostracized, fear not fitting in, or fear not being saved. And we have to get away from these leaders who causes us to err. Because true obedience under the covenant is meant to be driven by love and gratitude for deliverance. But when the focus shifts to man's rules, the resulting obedience is merely a fearful performance, draining the joy. That's why you don't have no joy. The Sabbath day is supposed to be a delight. People around here hungry, cold, tired. Some people just getting off work at nighttime, don't have time to cook. And because man told them you can't cook on the Sabbath day, they around here fasting on the Sabbath day. So the resulting obedience of them obeying what man told them to do, not to cook, is merely a fearful performance, draining the joy from the heart and extinguishing the light in their eyes, according to Psalms 19:8. Therefore, making God's law appear burdensome and hard to keep, which leads to spiritual alienation. Man is doing this, and he's going to pay for it. God is angry with these leaders. He is angry. All the sin is in the world. He's not teaching the law according to thus says Yah. They start leaning to their own understanding. These leaders are causing the people to err. The sin of false teachings. Number 1, trading divine law for human doctrine. Isaiah chapter 9 verse 16 says, "For they that lead this people cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed." How are they destroyed? Because they substitute God's clear, simple statutes for complex, burdensome precepts of man. I mean, it could be simple. And you can ask them a simple question. They'll go around the world before they come and answer your question. And add stuff to it. Because it just can't be this simple. God is not this clear and simple. So I'm going to make it complex for them too. The core failure of errant leaders is that they replace the clear covenant instructions of God with their own self-serving doctrines. They take the glorious, life-giving law and twist it through blind ambition, popularity, greed, or power. And the result is what? Destruction. The leaders don't teach Torah as a roadmap to holiness and righteousness under covenant living. They don't. They teach it as a tool for control and condemnation. Look what I know. I know something. I know more than you. They substitute the justice of the law for the merciless condemnation of the law. Always want to condemn, telling you what you're not doing. And that's something about Israel I've noticed. They're always watching what you do so they can criticize what you do. Always. And don't realize people watching them. Always want to watch a sister and brother and talking about what sin they're doing or committing. So what sin are you doing or committing, my sister or my brother? Just like these ministers always preaching about what happens if you don't tithe or do as they say. They shift the focus from teaching to ridiculing and ostracizing. And the people are doing the same thing too. They're the new sister or brother coming to the congregation. All eyes on them so they can criticize, look them up and down and criticize how they look or how they talk. I don't understand us. And we have seen this play out a few weeks ago with Pastor Marvin Winans and the Houston female pastor who fired the praise member, Mahogany in front of others. Both of these scenarios played out live over YouTube. And we know about Pastor Marvin Winans got up there telling that woman about how she's supposed to be sit down and let the other folk who had bigger donations come first. And then this female teacher, pastor, call herself pastor up in Houston, got up there and told a praise member how she didn't like the way she hugged her. Had to get out in front of the world and talk about her and really ridicule her, ostracize her, put her down, and got all kind of backlash. They show no restraint. If it comes up, it comes out. But them the type of people we love. Flock to them. Give them all our money. They lie and tell you you're supposed to tithe, you're going to tithe. Go broke trying to tithe. And a poor person don't supposed to tithe. I know they ain't going to like that. The tithe is for the poor. Now think about that. If you poor, what you doing tithing and the tithe is for you? It's coming right back to you. It's not for no minister, no pastor, no preacher, no teacher. You get donations, my brothers and my sisters. You don't get tithing. And tithing was never about money. Nigga talking about where Abraham, he tithed. Abraham didn't tithe from his possession. He tithed from stuff he got in war. War booty. Go back and read. I read and pay attention. So at the end of the day, what? These people, these pastors, ministers, teachers, and leaders, they become spiritual gatekeepers. Using the law not to bring people closer to God, but to exclude them from God and judge them. Something they do very well, and the people who follow them do as well too. Spiritual gatekeepers. Use the law not to bring people closer to God, but to exclude them and judge them and lead them away from God. Think God gonna be all right with that? Keep thinking. They don't fear God. I told you, hate him. Don't fear him whatsoever. Number 2, the righteous liberty of God's word. The law is a blessing and a path to wisdom. And that's what it's supposed to be. A light and a path to wisdom. So Deuteronomy chapter 4, verse 6 declares that keeping the law is Israel's wisdom and understanding in the sight of all nations. It was designed to elevate them, not to degrade them, like the ministers do. When followed in the correct spirit with a repentant and grateful heart, the law is simple and straightforward, Israel, not complicated and complex. It establishes clear boundaries that ironically provide the greatest sense of freedom and security. The greatest. The law is light, not weight, a burden. They made it a burden to the people. Psalms chapter 119, verse 105 famously states, let me put it on the screen, about what the law is. Famously states, then you got people around here want you to be in darkness, that thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. A lamp and a light do not cause a person to stumble in the dark. They illuminate the path so the person does not stumble into the darkness and peril of sin. The law is not the weight, Israel. The weight is the sin and confusion of the world outside of the light. A lamp and a light do not cause you to stumble in the dark. The light illuminates the path so that you do not stumble in the darkness and peril of sin. The law is not the weight. The weight is the sin and confusion of the world outside of the light. Therefore, if you feel perpetually resentful, angry, or discouraged, you are likely dragging the heavy yoke of the precepts of man. You must return to the simple, pure, unadulterated law of God, which is a blessing and a path to wisdom and holiness. Anything that causes alienation from Elohim is not from Elohim. It is a destructive deception intended to keep you spiritually blind and constantly complaining in the wilderness of sin. And that's why people are complaining now. Constantly complaining. Let's talk about despising God's name. Despising the name in the presence of God. That's number 4. Despising the name and presence of God. The goal is to explore how Israel despised God through idolatry and ritualistic emptiness. Let's talk about the original covenant and its violation. No other gods. We're going to explore Exodus chapter 20, verses 3 through 5, Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 and 5. So let's set this matter in order by going to Exodus chapter 20, verse 3. And it says, You, Israel, forget about the other nations. You shall have no other gods before me. That's what God said. The meaning of before me, the Hebrew phrase translated as before me, is al panai, means in my presence, in my face, or in addition to me. That's what that means. Al panai means in my presence, in my face, or in addition to me. It essentially prohibits syncretism. What is syncretism? the blending of Yah worship with the rituals and beliefs of foreign deities such as JC, Allah, Muhammad, etc. Whoever you're serving, with God, after God, before God. That's what it means. Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, the first commandment is the bedrock of the entire covenant, serving as the ultimate test of loyalty for Israel. So if you can't get that right, you're going to break the rest of them. And they did. The first commandment emphasizes its exclusivity, highlights the meaning of allegiance and its connection to the Shema. The first commandment is the foundation of exclusive allegiance. It's the exclusive allegiance to Creator. You can't get that right, you're going to get all the rest of them wrong. The command, put it back up here again. This command, you shall have no other deities or gods before me. It's not just the first of the 10 commandments, it's the heart of the covenant and the very definition of the relationship between Yah and Israel. It establishes a requirement of exclusive love, devotion, and allegiance that is entirely non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. Can't negotiate with God. Talking about, well, I think I want to go get a calf. I think I want to go get a cross, a Jewish star. No. Can't negotiate with God. Non-negotiable. He ain't that type of business. So the nature of despising God. What is the nature of despising God? The act of replacing God begins precisely with the violation of that command. Having other deities. It begins precisely with the violation of this command. Despising God does not always start with overt blasphemy or hatred. It begins with replacement. Start replacing God with other deities. That's what it does. When Israel introduced other deities like Baal, the storm god, or Asherah, the fertility goddess, they were making a statement that Yah was either insufficient, he couldn't guarantee rain or fertility, or too demanding. His moral and legal code was too strict. And we say that right today. You can't keep them laws. The law done away with. That Moses' law. Moses gave those laws. They're not God's law. How we know Moses didn't write those laws that came down? We ain't see no God. So by seeking the easy promises of the foreign gods, they devalued the God who had redeemed them from slavery. As the prophet Jeremiah laments, for my people have committed 2 evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn out cisterns for themselves. Broken cisterns that can hold no water. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. That's a shame. Emptiness. If it can't hold water, it's empty. These cisterns are empty. It shows that idolatry is a choice of broken, empty substitutes over the living, sustaining source of life, which is God. Total devotion, the demand of the Shema. Let's talk about that. The Creator demands total devotion. It's in the Shema. And what does this say? Hear, O Yisrael. My mistake. Hear, O world. Or hear Christians. Or hear Jews. It said, hear, O Yisrael. Yah is our God. It didn't say JC. It didn't say Allah. It didn't say Buddha. It didn't say Muhammad. It didn't say Adonai. Or Hashem. It says Yah is our God. And Yah is one, not 3. Not no Father, Son, and Ghost. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 4. What don't we understand that? It's right there. But we will make excuses. We be blind. I told you spiritual blindness. We can't see that. We don't want to see that. That's real spiritual blindness. I mean, no matter what you tell them, they still gonna have their cross up there. And the verses immediately following the Shema explain what this singular allegiance requires. It explains it. You shall love Yah, your God, with all your heart. Not some, not half. Because if you don't love him with all your heart, you have room for somebody else to come in or something else to come in. And you love them half-heartedly. You shall love Yah, your God, with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your might. Deuteronomy chapter 6, verse 5. All, not some. If you do halfway, there's room for something else to come in. I don't understand us. This command is the ultimate expansion of the first commandment. It teaches that allegiance is not merely abstaining from other deities, but it is an active internal love that consumes the entirety of one's inner life, your heart, soul, and might. When this love is divided or directed elsewhere, the first commandment is automatically broken. You know, already sinned and broken it. This total devotion is the required response to Yah's exclusive claim on Israel. The first commandment, therefore, establishes the theological and spiritual blueprint for all other commandments. If God is not recognized as sovereign, none of his other laws have authority, Israel. If he can't recognize that he's the one, the only true God, none of his laws have authority over you. You're going to go over there and see what Paul say, what the disciples say, what JC say, what Luke, what John say. And people love to quote John and love to quote Paul. And that's why, because they broke the first commandment. So I'm going to read that again. The first commandment, therefore, establishes the theological and spiritual blueprint for all other commandments. If God is not recognized as sovereign, that means he rules alone. That's what sovereign means. None of his other laws have authority, and they don't when it comes to Christians. Because they value what Paul say over what God says. What JC say in difference to what God says. What John say, what Luke says. They might mention Matthew. You can't say you love God and you over in the New Testament. Listen to what John, Luke, Matthew, Paul, and JC saying. There's no love. You're just lying to yourself. The despising of God through idolatry. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. Exodus chapter 32, verse 7 and 8. Psalm chapter 106, verses 19 through 21. Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 5 through 18. So we're going to talk about forsaking the fountain of living waters, found in Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 13. I read that not too long ago. For my people have committed two evils. They have forsaken me, the fountain of living waters, and hewn out cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that can hold no water. I mean, why it can't hold water? Why? This verse illustrates the essence of Israel's sin. They turned away from the fountain of living waters, which is Yah, the source of life, sustenance, and stability, and turned toward broken cisterns. And broken cisterns are the lifeless idols of man. A cistern holds only stagnant stored water. A broken one holds nothing at all. This highlights the irrationality and futility of idolatry. Empty, futile, can't do nothing for you. And they demonstrated this with what? The golden calf, that old calf up there. Early betrayal, the golden calf. The credit told Moses. While he was up there telling Moses, the people quickly turned aside, Moses. Go on back down there, Moses. Go on back down. Man, he got this out of my mouth good. Them folks already got a calf up there. The pattern of betrayal began almost immediately after the covenant was established at Mount Sinai. Even while Moses was receiving the very law that prohibited other deities, the people coerced Aaron into creating an idol. Aaron was scared for his life. Exodus chapter 32, verses 7 and 8 says, they have quickly turned aside from the way that I commanded them. Quickly, quickly, not slowly. They have quickly turned aside from the way that I commanded them. They have made for themselves a molten calf and have worshipped it and sacrificed to it. Exodus chapter 32, verses 7 and 8. That's a shame. They quickly turned aside. Those folks were so ruthless. You think Moses was scared? They had Aaron scared too. I mean, they rejected the Most High. This act demonstrated the people's deep-seated impatience and preference for a tangible, visible deity, foreshadowing the long struggle against the invisible, transcendent God of Israel. That's a shame. That's a shame. And they didn't think they did nothing wrong. Being led by evil. The whole time being led by evil. Following the multitude when they were hollering about the fish. I mean, it's like all the leaders, they didn't want to listen to Moses, but they want to listen to all the ones that were acting a fool. All the ones that are acting a fool. And that's how our people are today. Psalms 106, verses 19 through 21. They made an image of a calf at Horeb and worshiped a metal idol. They traded their majestic God for the image of an ox that eats grass. Now think about that. An ox that eats grass. Let that sink in. God for an ox that eats grass. They rejected the Elohim who delivered them, the one who performed great deeds in Egypt. They rejected him. They won't have nothing to do with him once they get out there in their wilderness. They said, we on our own now. Moses, we don't need you. We don't need this God you're talking about either. So I don't know what you keep coming here talking about what God said. You keep going to the mountain, come back talking about what a God said. We don't know. You up there, I don't know what you up there, who you up there talking to, but we know we got it from here now. They don't want to hear nothing about no God. Boy, those folk was ruthless. Oh my goodness, I don't want to deal with them either. I mean ruthless. Yeah, them folks scared. I mean did all kind of evil. I mean, credit said they quickly turned away. Systematic adoption. Baal and Asherah. They kept on going too. They got into the land, saw the Canaanite deities. Oh, we want them too. They saw, look, think about this. They saw the idols of Egypt, made that calf in the wilderness. They got to the land, saying, man, we learn the ways of these people. And the credit told them, go to the land and learn about what those folks did in the land because I'm kicking them out for all the evil sin they did. And they went right into the same thing. Want to learn about the deities they served and everything. And they went right there and did the opposite. I told you everything. The credit said do, they did the opposite. The sin progressed from impulsive rebellion to systematic state-sponsored apostasy once Israel settled in Canaan. It didn't stop. They adopted the regional fertility cults, the fertility idols, which promised predictable rain and harvest, something they associated with the land's previous masters, the Canaanites. So what was Baal? Baal was the powerful storm and fertility god. Worshipping him was seen as necessary to ensure rainfall. Asherah was the chief female deity, often represented by sacred poles or wooden figures, worship for fertility and life. So they quickly turned aside and kept on turning aside. Never did turn forward. They kept their face backwards. So this systematic adoption was most pronounced in the northern kingdom of Israel, especially under King Ahab and Jezebel, whose policies promoted Baal worship and persecuted the prophets of Yah. The entire structure of the covenant was threatened when the king sanctioned the worship of a foreign deity over Elohim. So profaning the sanctuary. Ezekiel's vision, they talk about him. His vision. Ezekiel chapter 8, verses 5 through 18 describes a sequence of escalating abominations. The image of jealousy, most likely a foreign deity, set up near the gate. I mean, they were doing everything. Do you have 70 elders secretly burning incense to idols of creeping things and detestable beasts, painting on the temple walls? Women weeping for Tammuz, a Babylonian fertility deity? I mean, they just went all out. Worst of all, 25 men in the inner court between the porch and the altar, bowing down to the sun in the east, turned their backs on the sanctuary of Yah. I mean, they totally despised Yah. Did everything in their power to show that they despised Yah. Up in his house, in his land, like our children do. Come in and have disdain for our rules. We did the same thing to God. Had disdain for his rules. And then our children do the same thing to us. Disdain. Don't want to hear nothing. Up in our house, won't tell us what to do. So we up in God's house, in his land, and won't tell him what we won't do. Nothing but despising God. So this vision of Ezekiel confirmed that the sin was not just in the fields or the homes, but had penetrated the core of the sacred relationship up in the temple. This complete betrayal was an ultimate insult to God's unique power and holiness, justifying the final destructive judgment delivered by the Babylonians. Next up, despising his presence. Ritual without reverence. Isaiah chapter 1 verses 11 through 15. Malachi chapter 1 verses 7 through 8 and 12 and 13. The question of quantity versus quality. Isaiah chapter 1 verse 11. The prophetic condemnation of Israel's ritualistic performance highlights a critical truth. God values sincere devotion and righteous living over empty religious compliance. When Israel's heart was dedicated to idols of social injustice, their sacrifices and festivals became worthless, even offensive. Rejected rituals had a contempt for the covenant. Put that on the screen. These rejected rituals, they end up showing a contempt for the covenant. Them folks didn't want to have nothing to do with a God. Everything God said do, they did the opposite. And they did the least that they could do. Bought these lame and sick animals up there. I mean, despise God totally. Totally despise it. Did everything to walk contrary. So the question of quantity versus quality. God exposes the futility of their religious zeal by challenging the quantity of their offerings in light of their spiritual emptiness. God asked them, what are your multiplied sacrifices to me? Says Yah, I have had enough of burnt offerings, of rams, and the fat of well-fed beasts. I do not delight in the blood of bulls or of lambs or of goats. The Christ said, that ain't what I asked you for, and that's not what I want. You're going to come here and give me something I don't want. He said, he tired of. You're doing everything contrary to my laws. Everything. He said, when you enter my presence, Do you actually think, I'm going to put this on the screen for you guys. He said, when you enter my presence, do you actually think I want this animals trampling on my courtyards? Do not bring any more meaningless offerings. I consider your incense detestable. Why? Because you observe with the new moons and stuff. He said, you observe new moon festivals, Sabbaths, and convocations, but I cannot tolerate sin-stained celebrations. I hate your new moon festivals and assemblies. They are a burden that I am tired of carrying. Christ, I don't want to carry this load no more. Y'all getting on my nerve. You do everything contrary to what I say. And think you're going to come here and pay your way to heaven, as they say, with all this foolishness. When you spread out your hands in prayer, I look the other way. When you offer, let me put this and put 15, I'm sorry. Put this on here. You can see what that is. Verse 15, when you spread out your hands in prayer, I look the other way. When you offer your many prayers, I do not listen because your hands are covered with blood. Isaiah chapter 1, verses 11 through 15. First thing, you lost your mind. The problem here, Israel, like many today, mistakenly believe that if they simply offered more sacrifices, they could appease God and cover their sins. So if I could pay more tithes, I get to heaven. They treated the altar like a transaction, the same way prosperity teachers treat tithes. You cannot pay your way out of sin or into heaven, as people say. They treated the altar like a transaction. Think about it. The same thing we do today. Same kind of spirit. The same way prosperity teachers treat tithes. Having people thinking they can pay their way out of sin or pay their way to heaven. God's response, God declares he is satiated and does not delight in the blood of their animals. He had provided the means for atonement, but he required a corresponding change of heart, which was absent. Their heart didn't change. Murdered no poor animal for no reason at all. Still had the same heart when they left. Same heart. Didn't change no kind of action. I told you, your action speaks louder than word. Did the same thing they were doing before they sacrificed those animals. A waste of animals. That's why the credit says stain. All that blood. Grace, I'm tired of your stain, your sin stain celebration. Sin stain. With the blood of these bulls and lambs and goats. No reason at all. And God told them what to do. And what is that to do? He told them plainly what to do. They ain't going to want to do that. They're not going to want to do that. He turned them to learn to do good. Seek justice. Correct oppression. Bring justice to the fatherless. Plead the widow's cause. That's in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 17. Don't offer me these vain, empty sacrifices. He told them to learn to do good. What is that? Seek justice. Oh, I can't do that. I got to always try to get over. I'm a grifter. Correct oppression. Who's being oppressed? You oppressing me by telling me to do this. Bring justice to the fatherless. What fatherless? That's not my problem. Plead the widow's cause. That's not my problem either. I don't know why she by herself. She gonna get another husband. We'll make excuses to keep from doing good because we love to do evil. That's why. We love it. Chris, I'm not for that. Don't come to me thinking you can pay your way out of sin. Without justice, the rituals were meaningless and empty, a waste of time and resources. Despising Yah's table. Let's talk about that. Because that's what they were doing. Malachi chapter 1, verses 7 through 8. How they despise Yah's table. You are offering defiled food upon my altar. But you say, how have we defiled you? By saying that Yah's table is contemptible when you offer blind animals and sacrifice. Is that not evil? And what else? And when you offer those that are lame or sick, is that not evil? They were getting the worst. God didn't deserve the best. God desired the first fruit. He demanded the first fruit. He demanded the first of everything. Cattle and agriculture. We don't go get the worst. You see how they have a contempt for God? Despise God? I'm going to go get the worst. Don't go over there and touch that. Don't go over there and get that good out. Oh, we're going to have it tonight. Go over there and get that sick one over there about to die. And go up there and offer sacrifice. She ain't going to know. God right there heard you. You told him to go over there and get that sick animal. Like he heard them in the wilderness when they were complaining. He heard them. He told them, guess what? You spoke that into existence. They're weeping and doing for a night, but that joy sure didn't come in the morning because the next morning, Craig told them, you're going to die in this wilderness. Everybody 20 and over. I bet they're holidaying. You don't miss your water until your well runs dry. Complaining, see what they complaining, goddamn? And these folks want to go off of the lame. They're sick. They're blind. So what is this? The law violated. They violate the law. The law explicitly required that sacrificial animals be without blemish. That's in Leviticus chapter 22, verses 19 and 20. This was essential because the offering represented the perfect standard of the covenant and the holiness of Elohim. So there was an intentional insult to God by bringing lame, blind, and sick animals. The cheapest and least valuable animals they could find and get. And they possessed. They revealed their cynical view of God and showed them how much they value God and respected God. They were essentially saying, God is unworthy of something good, and this is all he is worth, these lame, sick, and blind animals. This was not just a breach of ritual, it was a contempt for God's holiness, treating the sacred act as trivial, bothersome routine that could be fulfilled with garbage. Malachi makes it clear that they were despising Yah's table by devaluing the very presence of God and the provisions of the covenant. I mean, evil. Didn't even think they were doing evil. Don't even care that they were doing evil. Malachi 1 verses 12 and 13. He let them know. You are profaning. You're profaning it by saying that this God's table is, let me get this right quick. I mean, all kind of evil. This on the screen, you are profaning it. Y'all's table. I mean, everything under the sun. Anytime God said do something, they did the opposite. Malachi chapter 1, verses 12 and 13. But you are profaning it by saying that the table of Yah is common and its offering despicable. You also say how tiresome it is. Man, too much work. You take too much work. I got to do all this. Who said this? I don't know if God said all of this. He ought to be happy I gave him something. You know us. He ought to be happy I gave him some. I mean, anything to be contrary to God. Anything. So you also say how tiresome it is. You turn up your nose at it. Says Yah of heaven's armies. And instead bring what is stolen. They were bringing stolen stuff. Stealing other folk animals. Lame or sick. You bring those things for an offering. Should I accept this from you? Asked Yah. Yah said, I know you done stole it. Who you think I am? I mean, did everything under the sun to be contrary. Shalom, shalom, shalom. Jonathan Evans, much love, giving all praises, the highest honor and the greatest glory. Praise to Almighty Yah, the Elohim, Abraham, Yitzchak. We was need him like yesterday, family. Hallelujah. Thanks for joining. Aki Jonathan Evans. In essence, the prophets were taught that when the heart is unrighteous, the most sacred acts become profane. I'm going to say that again. In essence, what these prophets were saying is that when your heart is unrighteous, the most sacred acts become profane. I told you can't do nothing good. You got a wicked heart, unrighteous heart. Always want to be a grifter. Always looking to get over. Always looking to do the least. God demands the heart and the actions of a righteous life. Otherwise, the multiplied sacrifices are simply the empty labor of broken sisters. Empty. Won't do you no good. But we still pursue. We pursue them to the end. Because we think one day going to bless us. Part 5, despising his laws and statutes. And what is the goal? Let me go back. Is this right? The goal is to examine how Israel's disregard for God's explicit commands manifested in injustice and moral decay. And they sure did. All kinds of evil. They did all kinds of evil. So let me put this up first. Despising God's righteousness. Let me put this up. Injustice to the vulnerable. Deuteronomy chapter 10, verses 18 and 19. Isaiah chapter 1, verse 23. Amos chapter 2, verses 6 and 7. Amos chapter 5, verses 11 through 12. Micah chapter 3, verses 1 through 3. Hallelujah. And starting off, the first one is defiling justice, despising God's image and humanity. The prophets consistently argued that Israel's failure to uphold social justice was not merely a civic failing, but a direct act of contempt towards God himself, revealing a fundamental hypocrisy in their worship. The law explicitly demanded protection for the most vulnerable members of society: the widow, the orphan, and the sojourner, who had no political or economic power. We had a mandate to protect the vulnerable, and we act like we don't understand it. We hate the poor. We hate them. God told you plainly that the poor would never cease from among you, and we act like we don't understand it. So God's unique holiness was reflected in a mandate to care for those in need, as the covenant community was commanded: the widow and the orphan. Yah declared himself the protector of the fatherless and the widow, making the abuse of these groups a direct attack on his character, according to Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 18. And we don't understand that. They're mistreating the vulnerable, and Most High gonna make you pay for it. Quickly. We don't understand that. and a sojourner. Israel was commanded to love the sojourner, which is a foreigner, because they themselves had been sojourners in Egypt, according to Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 19. This mandate tied their historical slave experience to their ethical requirement. And then you had a corruption of leadership. Next on the list. The corruption of leadership. You know that's always going to be a part of Israel's failures. Instead of upholding this foundational justice, the leaders, judges, and wealthy elite actively exploit the poor. The prophets targeted the ruling class for completely inverting the law. Love of corruption. That's in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 23. And it says, talk about the love of corruption. Isaiah directly condemned the leaders for their greed and legal corruption, stating that they loved bribes and pursued rewards, according to Isaiah chapter 1, verse 23. They loved them. Justice was only available to the highest bidder, making the courts a tool of oppression rather than a sanctuary of fairness. Your officials are rebels. They say they are rebels. Put it up here. Your officials are rebels. They're associated with thieves. All of them love bribery and look for payouts. They do not take up the cause of the orphan or defend the rights of the widow. I told you earlier, ain't not my problem. I ain't got no business, nothing to do with that. I didn't make them poor. I didn't make them fatherless. I didn't make her a widow. Then the next one on the list, selling the innocent, according to Amos. Amos, the prophet of social justice, accused the people of selling integrity for profit and mistreating the vulnerable. They mistreated them. I told you, people don't want to, even poor people don't want to be around poor people. Let's be real. Don't even want to be around. But courtesy that poor would not cease. But yep, they sell the righteous for silver and the needy for a pair of sandals. They trample on the dirt-covered heads of the poor. They push the destitute away, according to Amos chapter 2, verses 6 and 7. This phrase encapsulates the devaluation of human life and justice to the cheapest price possible, just like the animals, confirming that righteousness can be bought, sold, and mistreated. Also, they devoured the people, according to Micah chapter 3, verse 3. Devoured the people. Devouring the people, Micah. Micah used the shocking metaphor of cannibalism to describe the viciousness of the rulers who literally devoured the flesh of my people. Micah chapter 3, verse 3. Also, despising, number 3, despising God's law, despising his image. They did that very well. And we do that today through what? Murder. We are made in the image of God. In the image. So what you think you murdering when you murder someone? The image of God. You think God gonna be happy with that? I told you earlier about the days of Noah. Murder, bloodshed, violence. Christ said, I hated I created man. I hate it. And I created man in my image. My image. And they're destroying my image. By oppressing the poor, Israel demonstrated that their spiritual devotion, their multiple sacrifices, was a sham. The prophets taught that you cannot claim the love of God you cannot see while actively hating a human being made in his image. Say that again. The prophets taught that you cannot love a God you cannot see while actively, murdering and hating the human being made in his image. also add mistreating too. The ultimate crime was not simply the lack of charity, but the ultimate sin was not simply the lack of charity, but the profound theological error. They were despising God's law, meant despising his image in humanity. Since God identifies with the oppressed, the injustice committed against the widow or the orphan was an act of treason against the King of the covenant, and God is our King, confirming their internal rebellion and sealing their judgment. I mean, did everything contrary to God's law. And that's why I'm going to say it over and over again. Why every time they mention all the sins they did and committed, I'm gonna put up some more on the screen. I never read that cooking was a sin on any of these lists. Never read it. I wonder why. Never read it. I mean, their internal rebellion sealed their faith. They rebelled against God in every way possible. Every way possible. They despised the Holy One of Israel, had contempt for him. Despising holiness, moral corruption. Jeremiah chapter 5, verses 7 and 8. Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. Ezekiel chapter 22, verses 4 through 12. And Jeremiah chapter 7, verses 10 and 11. Breaking the Decalogue. The illusion of immunity. The Decalogue. Despising the Sabbath, the sign of the covenant. Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 13 and 16. But let me go to the first one up here first, though. Then you talk about the moral. Talk about the litany. I've been talking about this litany up here now. I mean, they had a litany of evil that they did. Put back on here, breaking the Decalogue. We've been talking about the 10 Commandments. I mean, this whole list of they broke all 10 commandments. All 10. Before I get to the Sabbath. All 10. The profound spiritual infidelity of the Hebrews were idolatry and social injustice. And it was matched by their rampant violation of specific moral laws contained within the 10 Commandments. The prophets exposed a shocking spiritual delusion, the belief that mere ritual attendance, going to church, at the temple, could somehow grant them immunity from the consequences of their heinous moral sins. The prophets exposed it. Let them know just because you come to the temple, it's not going to immune you from the consequences of your sins. So people think because going to church, they raise hell 6 days out of a week and go to church on Sunday and think they saved. They going to heaven. Like those folks thought that they can come to the temple and offer sacrifices. And their sins going to be what? Forgiven. So the prophets exposed this shocking delusion. Because that's what it is, a delusion. I mean, many Christians think that because they go to church and tithe, that grants them immunity from the consequences of their sin. According to them, you're no longer under the old law. They've done away with it. He nailed them to the cross. Y'all still keep a Sabbath day and don't cook and eat? Don't do nothing? Imagine that. Listen to y'all's message. You Hebrews, that's up in Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. Hosea told you what to do. He said, listen to God's message. While you around here listening to these lying preachers. Put that on the screen. Listen to y'all's message, you Hebrews.
For Yah has a covenant lawsuit against the people of Israel, for there is neither faithfulness nor loyalty in the land, nor do they acknowledge God. They don't even acknowledge God. They have a contempt for him. What God he talking about? Don't even acknowledge him. None whatsoever. Don't want to hear about no God. You know people don't want to hear about no God. Let's tell the truth. Verse 2. There is cursing, lying, murder, stealing, and adultery. They resort to violence and bloodshed. That's according to Hosea chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. And the same thing is being done today. And then they go on to talk about this litany of moral evil. Litany. They did everything under the sun. And like I'm going to keep saying, I saw nowhere where somebody was cooking on the Sabbath day and they said they broke the law. I mean, out of all that I read, why is this not on the list? They said they broke the Sabbath, but it's always buying and selling food. And somebody trying to work. I mean, always that. Let's talk about this litany. The moral code given in Mount Sinai was being systematically shattered by the people. The prophets condemned the widespread acceptance of capital offenses and personal corruption. I mean, they were doing everything under the sun. I mean, to the highest level. You name it, they did it. Let's talk about the first one on the list. You were talking about idolatry, but this is the first one. Theft, bribery, and deception. Dishonest commerce and usury was pervasive. The people was condemned. They was condemned for charging usury and for using false weights and measures for general theft and deceit. I mean, they did it all. And not one time did I see the Sabbath day were broken by them baking and cooking. They took bribes within you to shed blood. You engage in usury and charge interest. You extort money from your neighbors. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 12. I mean, stealing. Next on the list, idolatry. Idolatry. I told you they broke all the commandments. Yah asked, how can I leave you unpunished, Jerusalem? Your people have rejected me and have worshipped gods that are not gods at all. Not gods at all. Golden cat, anything, JC, anything, they just gonna worship. Even though I supplied all their needs, they were like an unfaithful wife to me. Jeremiah chapter 5, verse 7. I mean, did it all. And still doing it all. Then we have murder. And look at it. All the commandments. All the commandments they broke, Israel. All the commandments. Murder and violence. Violence was common, often connected to the seizure of land and property. The prophets called the leaders bloodshedders. They call them bloodshedders. They were shedding innocent blood. Everything. And it said up in Ezekiel, it said, see how each of the princes of Israel living within you has used his authority to shed blood. They were doing all this evil. All this evil. Then violation of the Sabbath. You have despised my holy things and desecrated my Sabbath. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 8. I told you they would all of it. All the commandments, they did it. You name it, they did it. Next one on the list, dishonoring their parents. Oppressed and mistreated the vulnerable. They have treated father and mother with contempt within you. They have oppressed the resident foreigner among you. They have wronged The credit said they wronged the orphan and the widow within you. Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 7. I told you, all of the commandments they broke. Let's talk about adultery and sexual immorality. I mean, that's next on the list. You name it, they did it. I told you, all kind of evil. The 10 commandments, all of them, they broke them. Now, adultery and sexual immorality. The prophet spoke openly about sexual sins and adultery. For example, Jeremiah chapter 5, verses 7 and 8, highlighting the breakdown of the foundational moral fabric of society. Because they went lusting. These men went lusting and flocking to the houses of prostitutes. They are like lusty, well-fed stallions. Each of them lusts after his neighbor's wife. Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 10 and 11. That's a shame. And not just that, they did all kind of other further evil. The most I told them not to do in Leviticus. All kind of evil. They have sexual relations with their father's wife within you. They violate women during their menstrual period within you. That's a shame. They couldn't even wait till the woman got off of her cycle. That says something. That says something. When it said lusty, well-fed stallions. One commits an abominable act with his neighbor's wife. Another obscenely defiles his daughter-in-law. Another violates his sister-in-law. His sister, his father's daughter within you. I told you they did all kind of evil. Next on the list, talking about false witness. I told you they did broke all the credits that y'all did it all. The corruption of the courts was central to their sin, with individuals being condemned based on lies and bribery. Slanderous men shed blood within you. That's according to Ezekiel chapter 22, verse 9. I told you all the commandments they broke. Every last one of them. Every last one of them. They broke. And they broke them in a wicked way, the most vile way, the most abominable way. False witness. The corruption of the courts was central to them. Their sin. And it's up there lying. Up there lying. I know they lying. Probably cost them out of their life. Because the Most High said slanderous men shed blood within you. Put that back on there. Slanderous men shed blood within you. They was up there lying on folks. Causing folks to lose their lives. Because of lies. Lying on someone. Just like Nabal was lied on. Jezebel got that, initiated that foolishness and evil. They did it in everything and didn't think twice about it. That's the sad part about it. Why would you get up there and lie and cause somebody to lose their lives? Is it that serious? I know people do it today, but they don't even have an afterthought. And despite engaging in these foundational moral evils, the people maintain a shocking confidence. I told you it didn't bother them. I don't bother folks today. Confidence in their safety simply because the temple of Yah was physically located in Jerusalem. See, the northern tribe, they had a temple like we do. They thought the Most High wasn't going to let the temple be captured and be defiled. This spiritual arrogance is confronted directly by Jeremiah in his famous temple sermon. The people would commit all manner of sins, like I just told you: theft, murder, adultery, perjury, idolatry, bound down to other deities, dishonoring the parents, violating the Sabbath. But what's not on the list? Cooking on the Sabbath day. I mean, all these sins they committed. And didn't think nothing of it. Every last one of them. Then the Most High, guess what he told Jeremiah in chapter 7, verse 10? They did all this evil. Then come and stand before me in this house, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered. On to go on doing all these abominations afterwards. Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 10. They come after they did all this, then they come and stand before me in this house, in the temple, which is called by my name, and say, we are delivered. On to go on doing all these abominations. They didn't stop. They didn't stop. The Most High had to stop them through judgment. He had to kick them out the land. Like we had to stop our children when they get out of hand. Kick them out the house. Let them learn the hard way. You don't miss your water until your well runs dry. They had a contempt for the Holy One of Israel. They had a contempt for God. The opposite had a contempt for the temple. Because they was up there, had abominations in there. I read earlier. Ezekiel saw them. On the temple wall, these beasts and insects and stuff. And they praying and bowing down to them. The temple wasn't even off limits. They desecrated that. This behavior demonstrated a profound contempt for the moral demands of a holy Elohim. They treated God as a fire insurance policy. Ain't nothing gonna happen to us. We safe because the temple here. The people viewed the temple as a magic charm, a lucky charm, a form of divine insurance that would protect them regardless of their sinful conduct. They believed that simply possessing the sacred structure was enough to ward off the Babylonian invasion. That was a lie. Completely separating religious ritual from morality. All that religious stuff they were doing. God ain't never had no religion. Following the ways of the heathen. Mocking the covenant by treating Yah's house as a sanctuary for those engaged in evil. They made it a den of robbers, according to Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 11. They mocked it. The Most High had to ask them, what in the world y'all think y'all coming to? And what you think you doing up in here? Y'all done got out of pocket, got out of hand. I mean, they got out of hand, forgot where they were. I mean, didn't have no respect for God, the sanctuary, or nothing. Whatever went on, they brought it into the temple. Had temple prostitutes. Jeremiah chapter 7, verse 11 said, do you think this temple I have claimed as my own is to be a hideout for robbers? Y'all lost y'all mind. They essentially mocked the core purpose of the covenant, which demanded that external worship be matched by internal purity. The ultimate blasphemy was believing that a holy Elohim would endorse, protect, or overlook all that evil they were doing, simply because they were offering sacrifices. Their actions showed that they did not fear God's judgment and deeply misunderstood his nature as defined by the Ten Commandments. All out of order. That's disorder. Disorder. I mean, blasphemy. Doing all that evil. And thought they could just come up there and just offer those sacrifices. And wasn't nothing going to happen. Nothing was going to happen. Prayer said, I'm going to show you. Y'all going to get up out of here. You got to get up out of here with a quickness, too. You can't get out of here fast enough. And they want to kill Jeremiah. He's like Moses, Jeremiah, and Kahia. God said, therefore, I will make you an object of scorn to the nations, an object to be mocked by all lands. Those both near and far from you will mock you. You with your bad reputation. Full of turmoil. Ezekiel chapter 22, verses 4 and 5. Crazy, y'all lost y'all mind. I don't know who y'all think y'all messing with, but y'all bark up the wrong tree. I ain't the one to be played with. So y'all been getting away with this stuff for far too long. You got to go. You got to go. Let's talk about the Sabbath. Despising the Sabbath, the sign of the covenant. In Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 13 to 16, Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 15 to 18, Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 27, Exodus chapter 34, verse 21, and Exodus chapter 20, verse 10. Yep, they despise Sabbath profanation. Let's talk about that on the first on the list. The Sabbath profanation, profaning the Sabbath. Profaning the Sabbath. And that's the first on the list about the contempt for God's sanctifying power. The Sabbath was not merely a day off. It was a profound recurring sign of the covenant between Yah and Israel, embodying the God's dual role as creator and redeemer. By repeatedly profaning the Sabbath, Israel showed a fundamental contempt for God's sanctifying power and his authority over time itself. The Sabbath was a covenant sign, Israel. A covenant sign. So the nations out there buying and selling on the Sabbath day, they're supposed to see you out there buying and selling on the Sabbath day. That's how they know you're different. But you out there with the other nations on the Sabbath day, nope, that's not a covenant sign. You out there with them. What sign? It's showing you breaking the sign. Or you don't know the sign. The creation sign. Let's talk about that. First on the list. The Sabbath commemorates God resting on the seventh day after creation. Exodus chapter 20, verse 11. That's why I told you he rested after the manner. He couldn't be working on the Sabbath day. He'd be breaking his own Sabbath. Think about that. He had to rest. So observing it acknowledges God as the creator and the ultimate sovereign over the world. Next, it was a redemption. I'm going to talk about that next week coming up. About what the Sabbath is. That's why I got the dual blueprint. I think the title of a dual blueprint of the Sabbath, slavery, I think redemption or something, but it's the dual blueprint. But anyway, redemption sign. The Sabbath also served as a perpetual reminder of Israel's deliverance from Egyptian slavery, where they were forced to labor ceaselessly. Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 15. And that tells you what kind of labor it is. Because if you look at that that verse and chapter, it lets you know what kind of labor you are supposed to rest from, Israel. It tells you Egyptian slavery, what they did. That's hard work. Building. It's comparable to what? Work we do on a job, slave labor. So observing it affirms God as the Redeemer, who grants freedom and rest. So that's what these two signs going to be when I talk about next week. The Sabbath. It acknowledges God as the creator and as God as the Redeemer. Those are the two. That's why you have two different words for work. One of them dealing with the creator, Malacca. The other one dealing with Israel, Avodah. So when it says complete rest, it means complete rest from those two. When people say, it's that complete rest, you need to know the Hebrew for it. The Hebrew means complete rest for both of those. Creator and skill craftsmanship, and the rest from slavery, slave type work. People need to go back and just read and study and go back to the Hebrew. And I went through it in the Septuagint, the Dewey Wright. I went through all these different kinds. And it goes back to the Septuagint. And all of them are the same when he talks about the kind of rest that you do on a Sabbath day. So when you see any, no, it's still going to be the word or vote are still going to remain the same. So you have a adjective in front of it. The noun still going to remain the same. So if you said no rest, no work, any work, it's still going to be the same kind of work. That's how plain and simple. Because you just got two words for work. And none of it dealing with no work and no domestic work. I'll put it like that. None of it deal with domestic work. To make it plain and simple. But as Ezekiel chapter 20 verse 12 says, it states that the Sabbath was explicitly given as a sign to differentiate Israel from the surrounding nations, proving that Yah is the one who sanctified them, who sets them apart as holy. So profaning the sign to violate the Sabbath was to violate the sign, rejecting the God who both created and redeemed them. The prophets condemned this sin repeatedly, particularly the focus on commerce. Listen to this. The prophets condemned this sin of breaking the Sabbath day. And what sin did they constantly talk about? Commerce and personal gain. And what is that? Working for money and buying and selling for money. I told you. Instead of resting and worship. And nowhere was cooking on the Sabbath ever mentioned as a sin or violation of Sabbath rest. The prophets constantly talked about commerce and personal gain. You working for money or you buying and selling for money. That's why they were telling them in Nehemiah about that. You out here buying and selling. Jeremiah said the same thing. Our people, I'm going to say they don't read. I guess they trust in these leaders. Jeremiah warned them. He warned them in Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 27 about keeping the Sabbath day holy. And that's how you keep it holy. And when he's warning them about that, he said, but if you do not listen to me to keep the Sabbath day holy and not to bear a burden into the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day. And they were talking about bringing in stuff to buy and sell. And I don't understand how people can read all of this and not see anything about cooking, and then they don't get it. Then the credit said, then I will kindle a fire in its gates, and it shall devour. It ain't said nothing about, you shouldn't kindle. Let me go read this again. But if you do not listen to me to keep the Sabbath day holy and not to bear a burden into the gates of Jerusalem on the Sabbath day, then I will kindle a fire in its gate, and it shall devour the palaces of Jerusalem, and it shall not be quenched. That's Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 27. The Christ said, I take care of you around here want to buy and sell on the Sabbath day. That's the main thing they had a problem with on the Sabbath day, with buying and selling. The main problem. Nowhere have I read about cooking. They constantly talked about this, buying and selling. Jeremiah talked about it. Nehemiah talked about it. Buying and selling. This makes clear the destruction of Jerusalem was partially linked to this specific sin. No, Jeremiah, it was cooking on the Sabbath day. You just wrong. You got that wrong. Because our people say cooking is a sin. Ezekiel noted that Israel's profanation of the Sabbath was one of the primary reasons God was compelled to scatter them among the nations. Listen to Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 13 and 16. Let's go there. They broke the Sabbath, doing all kind of evil and wicked. All kind of evil and wicked on the Sabbath day. I never, ever read that anybody broke the Sabbath day by cooking on it. I just want somebody to show me that. That's all. Just please show me. So Ezekiel chapter 20, verses 13 and 16 said, but the house of Israel rebelled against me in the wilderness, They did not follow my statutes, and they reject my regulations. The one who obeys them will live by them. You're supposed to live by them, Israel. But they ain't want to live by them. They want to do everything but. And they utterly desecrated my Sabbaths. So I decided to pour out my rage on them in the wilderness and destroy them. I think it's supposed to be, destroy them. Let me change that right quick. In the wilderness, and they utterly desecrated my Sabbath. So I decided to pour out my rage on them in the wilderness and destroy them. I did this because they did not observe my regulations. The critics said they ain't want to listen. They want to do everything they in their power against me. They rejected my statutes. They desecrated my Sabbaths, and their eyes was fixed on their father's idols. Their father's idols. Whatever their father was doing, they were doing. Just like some of our people. I was born a Christian. I'm a dad Christian. Big mama. And so-and-so at this church. They are deacon at this church. My granddaddy found this church. He's on the board of deacons. He was the pastor. He was a founding member. Talk about Nehemiah's rebuke about them buying and selling on the Sabbath day. I mean, they keep having the same problem about buying and selling on the Sabbath day. I don't see no problem about cooking. That's why I told you, you got to think. Let's include me. That's why I get to think. That's why the crazy thing. He know I'm going to search it out. I'm going to search it out. When I get to something, I'm going to search it out. It just takes me a little time because I have a lot on my plate. And I have a lot of lessons already scheduled. So when something comes up, that's why I have so many lessons already scheduled on my channel up until next year. Up in so-called April. Because when I'm doing one lesson, another lesson idea come up. And I start working on that. Sometimes I work on a new lesson and then forget about it. I ain't gonna forget about it. Don't want to do the old lessons because I'm so excited about the new lesson. I'm like, I get to that one. And then I'll be late trying to teach it. So I get so excited about, studying the Holy Scriptures. So I turn around and get started on something else. And one lesson always lead to another lesson. Always lead to another lesson. And I love it. Always have fresh content. Never repeat nothing. But yeah, Nehemiah, the chronic ongoing nature of this sin of buying and selling is dramatically highlighted after the exile returned by the reformer Nehemiah. Even after the Babylonian exile, which was partially caused by this very sin, buying and selling, the people had not learned the lesson. Came back and still doing the same thing. So Nehemiah found that merchants were trading and laborers, I told you, working. I keep telling you that's what the sin is on the Sabbath day. Working. Buying and selling and working. When I talk about it next week, you're going to see it. It's going to be so clear. The two words. Nehemiah found that merchants. Let me put this on the thing so you guys can see it. I already got the verse. I'm going to put this on what he found. Nehemiah found that merchants were trading and laborers. What are laborers? People working on the Sabbath. I keep telling you, nowhere cooking. People want to put on that general term when it said work, but those two words of work don't refer to nothing in the cooking, nothing domestic. It's dealing with work, craftsmanship, building, economic gain. So he found that they were trading and laborers were working on the Sabbath. The merchants, brother Nehemiah found that merchants were trading and laborers were working on the Sabbath, turning the holy day into a normal market day. See, that's how it be it's not set aside. It's not holy. Because you do the same thing. That's the type of work you're doing through the week. You're doing on the weekend, on the Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is not holy then. That's why I end up being holy, because you're not doing that same work. That type of work. Buying and selling. The Creator specifically told you, and I got a list of sins that Most High specifically say you can't do on a Sabbath day. And I'm going to say it's cooking there. So why people going to go put it up under the word work? That's man's precepts. So Nehemiah found that merchants were trading and laborers were working on the Sabbath, turning a holy day into a normal market day. And in those days, I saw in Yehuda people trading wine presses on the Sabbath. You're not supposed to do that either. And bringing in heaps of grain and loading them on donkeys. And the Most High plainly told them, your animal supposed to have the Sabbath off. And you're supposed to be in the garden or the fields on the Sabbath day. Also, Tyrians who lived in the city brought in fish and all kinds of goods and sold them on the Sabbath to the people of Yehuda in Jerusalem. Nehemiah chapter 13, verse 15 and 16. I keep telling you. Now, if they're doing all this evil, why did they say they were cooking the fish on the Sabbath day and there was a sin? You won't find that man precept. Wait till next week. You guys are going to see. Your eyes are going to be open. He saw all this evil. All this evil they were doing, but nobody ever said cooking was a sin. Cooking nowhere on the list. Isn't it strange that you never see cooking? 3 Sabbath violations occurred. I have them written down. Let me put it on here. 3 of them occurred when they were doing this. 3 Sabbath violations occurred. Exodus chapter 34, verse 21. 6 days shalt thou work, but on the 7th day thou shalt rest. In plowing time and in harvest thou shalt rest. Because they were treading wine presses. But the Sabbath day is a Sabbath to Yah, your God. And I'm going to show you how they had the donkey out there. I mean, Yah, your God. On it, you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servants or your female servants or your cattle or the resident foreigner who is in your gates. And they had the donkey out there working. That's a no-no. That's a no-no. Can't be doing all this. And that's what they were doing. He said, Exodus chapter 20, verse 10. But the 7th day is the Sabbath unto Yah thy God. In it thou shalt not do any manner of work. And when you see any, and you see no, and that work gonna still be the same, laborers work, what they were just doing. Laborers work. That's the type of work they're talking about. You know what laborers work is when you go to work? So this is out there. Treading the wine presses. Had a cattle out there. And then I'm going to show you this verse right. It's a key right here to let you know what kind of work it is. If the Most High telling your female servant to be off and your male servant to be off, and let you know it's talking about servitude. That type of work, the work they did up in Egypt. That's the clue right there. He want all of you to be off, the rest. Not to be doing that service work. Serving nobody on the Sabbath day. That's the rest he's talking about right there. It was never no rest from cooking. That's the rest, Yisrael. You got to look at clues in these sentences. I told you, put stuff into context. Look around these sentences. They give you clues. You have to go no other book. I never went to no other book to see what the Most High. Only time I went something, go to and I got the Hebrew, so I go look at the Hebrew and see what the definition of the Hebrew. But I already have the Hebrew already. In this, when I go to my Hebrew here, it's on the side right there. But I'm not going to another book to try to verify this book. I just go and cross-reference to other different kind of Bibles and stuff. So to make sure all of them align. And when it came to work, all of them said the same thing. So I don't understand this. I don't get it. But anyway, moving on. I'll talk about it next week. So buying and selling, what they were doing, that's the thing they had a problem with. A problem with buying and selling. So buying and selling are fundamentally secular labor and transactional work performed for economic gain. See, that's the type of stuff you can't do on a Sabbath day. You can't do that. And that is precisely what, get the Sabbath day. The Sabbath was intended to suspend in order to prioritize the spiritual and communal life of the covenant. The main things they were doing is precisely what the Sabbath was intended to suspend. Working it, wine, treading the wine presses, having your animals out there, buying and selling. The main thing that's forbidden, they were doing it. Nehemiah's response was swift and furious. He personally confronted the nobles and officials, condemning them harshly. He wasn't playing around. Talking about all that darn evil y'all doing. I mean, all that evil. He plainly told them, what kind of evil are you guys doing up here? Y'all, what God are you serving? Economic God? He said, what evil thing is this that you are doing? Profaning the Sabbath day. And that's how you profane the Sabbath day. Doing all that evil. And they act like they just couldn't get it. I mean, came from exile and still doing the same thing. That's why he said, I just don't get it. Did not your fathers do this? And did not our God bring all this disaster on us and on this city? Yet you bring more wrath on us and on this city. Yet you bring more wrath on Israel by profaning the Sabbath. Nehemiah chapter 13, verses 17 and 18. That's how you profane the Sabbath, Israel. By doing that type of work. That's the work. If somebody tell me, show you in the Holy Scripture what the Most High said, what they said. I can go into the Holy Scripture and show you a lot of examples of what kind of work they were doing that caused the Sabbath rest to be broken. But I bet you'll never find it cooking on the list. So Nehemiah took the drastic measure of ordering the gates of Jerusalem shut from Friday evening to the Sabbath ended to stop the commerce. So they just wouldn't stop. These actions of buying and selling on the Sabbath were the main crux of violating the Sabbath day rest. The main crux of it. And these people put cooking up there as the main crux. Despising the Sabbath was therefore not just an economic or legal offense, it was a spiritual offense. It was despising the God who rested and commanded rest. That's the type of rest that Most High wants you to rest from, Israel. You're not a robot. They were treating his sanctuary and his sanctifying time of rest as common. Didn't respect the sanctuary, didn't respect the time of rest, and willfully ignoring the history of judgment that resulted from that same contempt. I just got to buy and sell on Sabbath because that's when everybody else out. When I make my most money. I don't want to rest, but you were hollering about it when you were in Egypt. Wanting to rest. Pharaoh won't let you rest, but now you don't want to rest yourself. Got to make that dollar. Got to make that money, y'all. I mean, anything under the sun to be contrary to God. Then they were despising. Come on, let's do 4. Part 4. Despising his prophets. Rejecting his word. We're going to be in 2 Chronicles. Chapter 36, verses 15 and 16. Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 4 through 7. And a mess. Chapter 2, verse 12. Talking about the prophets. Rejecting the messenger, despising the authority of God. Let me put that on the screen. That's going to be our first subtopic. Rejecting the messenger, despising the authority of God. That's what they did. They despised the authority of God. Okay. The long, tragic narrative of Israel's infidelity was exacerbated by their continuous and violent rejection of the prophets, the very emissaries God sent to call them back to the covenant. This rejection was not just defiance, it was the ultimate act of despising the authority of the one who sent them. So you despising them, you're despising God. Number one, God's persistent grace. The Holy Scriptures make it clear that God did not simply allow Israel to fall into sin without repeated warnings. He displayed incredible patience and grace by sending his prophets, often at great personal cost to the messengers, to articulate the law, expose sin, and warn of impending judgment. The final summary of the southern kingdom's demise was written in 2 Chronicles, emphasizing the persistence of God's effort. Yah, God of their fathers. Put this up here. He persistently, go to 2 Chronicles 36 and 15. Yah, the God of their fathers, sent persistently to them by his messengers because he had compassion on his people and on his dwelling place. 2 Chronicles 36 and 15. God's motivation was compassion. He wanted to save them and preserve the sacred space of the temple. But guess what they did? Mocking, despising, and scoffed at them. Folks, and I don't know who y'all think y'all come talking to. You don't want to hear that mess. Our forefathers didn't want to hear it in the wilderness, and we don't want to hear it here. Y'all, I don't want. That folk, boy, they did all kind of evil. Despite God's persistent grace, Israel's response was one of arrogant contempt. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 16 speaks of this. Boy, them folks, they just evil. Man, I wouldn't want to be a prophet back then. Because one of them, they murdered. Now Uriel, people call it. Boy, they sent to Egypt and got that guy. It was evil. But they mocked the messengers of God, despised his words, and scoffed at his prophets until the wrath of Yah rose against his people until there was no remedy. 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 16. You heard it say, there is no healing for this. No coming back for this. You guys, you gone too far now. You went on a bridge to nowhere. So I'm done. I'm done talking now. I'm done sending my messages. Mock the messengers. They ridicule the prophets for their appearance, their warnings, and their lifestyle. They were vicious. I know you ain't talking to me looking like that. I know what else said. Go up that bald head. Go up that bald head. Despise his words. They refuse to internalize the message of repentance, treating the divine instructions as irrelevant words of disdain. Man, those some evil folks. I mean, some wicked people. They really hated God. Talking about despise. Oh my goodness. They scoffed at his prophets. They treated the warnings of judgment as fantasy or exaggeration, believing themselves immune to disaster. They didn't think it was going to ever happen. Because it took a while, so they figured, it ain't going to happen. It ain't happen when they said it was going to happen. They created giving you enough time to turn, to repent. That's what it is. And they don't understand grace and mercy. This rejection was widespread, affecting the kings, priests, and the people. So everybody around here acting a fool, doing evil. And they were commanding silence, saying, do not prophesy. Do not prophesy. They don't want to hear it. Don't come here. We don't want to hear it. No, I ain't got time for it. Don't want to hear it. I don't know who you talk. Go talk to the hand. You all out of order. We don't want to hear that. In the northern kingdom, the rejection of the message turned into an active campaign against the prophets to silence them. The prophet Amos was directly confronted and commanded to leave Israel and prophesy elsewhere. You commanded the prophet, saying, you shall not prophesy. Amos chapter 2, verse 12. Telling you, Israel, you commanded the prophet saying this. You shall not prophesy. We don't want to hear that. Talk to somebody else. Go and talk to the woo or somewhere. We don't want to hear that mess. Furthermore, the prophet's life was in danger. Jeremiah was repeatedly arrested, beaten, and threatened with death for daring to speak God's word. According to Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 1 and 2. And guess what else happened? In the reign of Jehoiakim, the prophet Uriah, I said Uriel earlier, was pursued to Egypt, brought back, and murdered. According to Jeremiah chapter 26, verses 20 through 23. He ran. They tried to kill him. He was pursued to Egypt and brought back and murdered. People didn't want to hear what God had to say. They murdered the prophets. You know, Jezebel did it too. She ain't the only one. Them folks don't want to hear nothing about no God. I'm telling you, they didn't want to, they despised God. They despised him. With their actions. I don't care what their words were saying. Their actions spoke louder than words. Jeremiah chapter 25, verses 4 through 7. Over and over again, Yah sent his servants, the prophets, to you. But you have not listened or paid attention. He said through them, each of you must turn from your wicked ways and stop doing the evil things you are doing. They didn't want to hear that. They love doing evil. That's how I pay my bill. That's how I get over. That's how I scam folks. You want me to stop doing that? I don't pay my bill. I don't pay my bill. You gonna pay my bill? When you got my pay, tell me what to do. I ain't trying to hear it. No, folks are vicious. I'm going to go back. He said, stop doing the evil things you are doing. If you do, I will allow you to continue to live here in the land that I gave to you and your ancestors as a lasting possession. Do not pay allegiance to other deities and worship and serve them. Do not make me angry by the things that you do. Then I will not cause you any harm. So now Yah says, you have not listened to me. I already warned you. You just ain't going to listen. But you have made me angry by the things that you have done. Thus you have brought harm on yourself. Credit said, you brought it on yourself. You reap what you sow. I'm tired of talking. I can't do this no more. I'm done talking to you. So we're going to talk about the spiritual implication of what going to occur because the credit just couldn't tell them. They didn't want to hear the prophets. They didn't want to hear from anybody. So the core principle behind this rejection is that to despise the messengers were to despise the one who sent them. So if you hate the messengers, you are hating the one who sent them. And since the prophets were speaking the literal words of Yah by saying, thus says Yah, rejecting their message was tantamount to rejecting God's direct authority. And this final act of contempt, shutting out the last voice of warning, pushed God's patience past the point of no return. To 2 Chronicles 36 and 16, that last verse says, there was no remedy. It says there was no remedy. It concludes. Put up there. So the Most High said, okay, then you can't come back from here. The last of 2 Chronicles 36 and 16 concludes that God's wrath rose until there was no remedy, justifying the final and inevitable judgment delivered by the Babylonian armies. Okay, so I tell you what, I'm going to see what you're going to have to say after this. So I'm done talking. I can't talk no more. You guys don't want to listen. You just ain't going to listen. Just go on by your business. We can just part ways. I'm just going to see what's going to happen. Because I'm going to show you better than I can tell you. Part 6, despising his land and covenant. How you despise it. Despising the land. Defilement through blood and idolatry. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 24 and 25. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 7. And Psalm chapter 106, verse 38. The Most High starts out saying, and I brought you into a plentiful land to enjoy its fruits and its good things. But when you came in, you want to take over and do whatever you thought you wanted to do. You defiled my land and made my heritage an abomination. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 7. How you do that? Bloodshed and injustice. The land was polluted by the hands of its inhabitants who shed innocent blood. Psalm 106, verse 38 speaks of those who shed innocent blood. The blood of their sons and daughters, whom they sacrificed to the idols of Canaan, and the land was polluted with blood. And the Most High plainly told them, you shall not defile yourselves in any of these ways. The people of Canaan, for all these, the nations whom I am driving out before you, defile themselves. They defile themselves in all these wicked things. And the land became defiled. So that I punished its iniquity, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 24 and 25. But they still did it anyway. The Most High told them about all the wickedness that the previous people who dwelt there did. And I'm going to go do it too. The ultimate tragedy of Israel's apostasy was that their sin defiled the very ground given to them by God, the holy land that was meant to be the physical expression of the covenant. The relationship between the people and the land was conditional. And when the people became impure and sinful, the land itself rejected them. The land, it was a holy inheritance. A holy inheritance. They didn't care. They didn't care nothing about the holiness of the land. All they care about what they can do in the land. It was a holy inheritance. And they defiled it. God bestowed the promised land upon Israel as a sacred gift, an inheritance, Israel, that was meant to be held in holiness, reflecting the presence of Yah who dwelt among them. Jeremiah chapter 2, verse 7 speaks of it. And I brought you into a plentiful land to enjoy its fruits and its good things. But when you came in, you defiled my land and made my heritage an abomination. Did whatever you thought you wanted to do. The land was an expression of God's blessing, sustained by their faithfulness. You can't do what you want to do in the Holy Land. That's why all kind of hell in the land over there now, with the inhabitants over there. It will never be peace over there. There also pollution by bloodshed, idolatry, and immorality were three main categories of sin in the land. I talked about the bloodshed and injustice in Psalms 106 and 38. Let's talk about idolatry and false worship. That's next on the list. You know what they were doing with it. I went over that earlier. Idolatry and false worship, building altars to Baal and Asherah, and participating in their cultic practices, was seen as a spiritual defilement that tainted the very soil. I mean, what they thought was going to happen. The land could not tolerate the presence of these abominations alongside the dwelling of Yah. I mean, those two couldn't exist. They couldn't coexist. Next on the list, I talked about earlier in Ezekiel, was sexual immorality. The law of Moses was clear that certain sexual sins defiled the land itself. The Most High told them what the inhabitants were doing before then. And they still wouldn't do it. The prophets linked the moral breakdown of the family and community directly to the defilement of the inheritance. I mean, the family structure was broken like it's broken today. Number 3 on the list, the land's rejection. It vomited them out. They said, we can't bear this evil. It's just too evil. Too much evil. Evil beyond evil. These folks doing everything under the sun. You name it, they did it. So they said, we can't bear them. The most graphic and terrifying consequences of this defilement is found in the Torah, establishing a principle that the land itself will become uninhabitable for the moral corruptness that was going on there. This concept is most vividly described in the book of Leviticus, warning the people before they even entered the land of Canaan. The Most High warned them, told them what's going to happen. He said, I'm kicking them out for all these things. Don't you go in and do it. Okay, we're going to go in and we're going to perfect them. Same thing about these holidays. Our people go in and perfect these holidays. They take it to another level, add their own made up traditions. I mean, evil. Anything to be like the slave master that they claim they hate. And the Most High told them, you shall not defile yourselves in any of these ways, for by all these the nations whom I am driving out before you defiled themselves, and the land became defiled, so that I punished its iniquity, and the land vomited out its inhabitants. Leviticus chapter 18, verses 24 and 25. After the Most High told them that, they decided we're going to go in and do it anyway. You're going to do it anyway. I don't know what y'all talking about. They just didn't know how to do it. Just like when somebody robbed something. See, they got caught because they didn't do it right. So the land is personified as having a moral stomach. It vomited them out. Just as the body rejects poison, the land would reject its moral toxic inhabitants. They were morally toxic. Israel, having adopted and perfected and compounded the sins of the previous nations, faced the same consequence of being ejected from the land. The exile, the Babylonian captivity, was thus dead, a tragic covenantal fulfillment of this prophecy. Because the Most High told them in Deuteronomy what's going to happen. So the physical removal of the people was the land's desperate act of purification. He told them in Leviticus what was going to happen, forcing them out so that the ground could observe its prescribed Sabbath of rest, according to 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 21, and be cleansed of the bloodshed and abominations with which Israel had polluted its holy inheritance. I mean, everything under the sun. Next on the list under the covenant is despising his covenant, breaking a sacred agreement. This is the one. Despising his covenant, breaking a sacred agreement. Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 7 and 8. Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 15 to 17. And Isaiah chapter 24, verse 5. Talk about the broken oath, the contempt for the covenant relationship. They were talking about the consequences will be finished. The ultimate offense of Israel was treating their sacred, exclusive bond with God as if it was meaningless. The covenant was not a contract to be negotiated or renegotiated. It was non-negotiable. It was a marriage-like bond that demanded absolute fidelity, and Israel's repeated violations amounted to spiritual adultery, leading to the deepest form of contempt for the relationship itself. The covenant was a marriage. The prophets frequently employed the powerful metaphor of marriage to describe the covenant between Yah, the faithful husband, and Israel, the unfaithful wife. Ezekiel chapter 16 dedicates an entire chapter to this devastating allegory. The solemn oath. Talk about that of this covenant. God took Israel, who was helpless and naked, according to Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 7, and made an oath with her, clothing her in fine array and promising enduring favor, Ezekiel chapter 16, verse 8. But we didn't want that. We betrayed it. It ain't good enough for me. We want something else. We want to be like the other nations. And that's why Moses warned you, don't be like the other nations, because he already knew. Already knew what you were going to do. Talk about the betrayal. Israel, however, used the very gifts God gave her, wealth, beauty, alliances, to commit adultery. Not adultery, idolatry, Slika. So Israel used the very gifts, that's the betrayal, God gave her, wealth, beauty, alliances, to commit idolatry, running after foreign lovers, deities, and nations, and committing spiritual prostitution, according to Ezekiel chapter 16, verses 15 through 17. Running after her lovers. This betrayal was so profound because it involved a rejection of God's love and a violation of intimacy, his marriage to Israel, and was far worse than a simple moment of infidelity. They were transgressing, changing, and breaking the eternal covenant, Israel. They did everything under the sun. Everything. Everything under the sun, they did it. If it came to their mind, they did it. It's like they just had a hatred for God. I don't understand it. Put this on the screen. Transgressing, changing, and breaking the eternal covenant. The prophet Isaiah summarized the sweeping nature of this transgression, showing that Israel's sin was not limited to individual acts, but a fundamental attack on a covenant structure and enduring nature. For he says in Isaiah chapter 24, verse 5, reads, the earth, let me put it on the screen, the earth lies defiled under its inhabitants, for they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, broken the everlasting covenant. Isaiah chapter 24, verse 5. Transgress the laws. What laws? The laws of the Torah. They continually violated the specific moral and ritual statutes, for example, the Sabbath and the Decalogue, which is the 10 Commandments. We talked about those earlier. We're breaking the Sabbath. And they changed the ordinance. How they changed the ordinance? They altered the prescribed modes of worship and the foundational decrees concerning justice, favoring their own customs over God's. That's how they did it. Their own customs. If God said do it this way, they decided we're going to add a little bit to it and do it that way. Another way. And another way. And another way. So whatever God said, they did the opposite. They purposely did the opposite. It's like they just had a mind. Well, I said earlier, they have gone backward. They purposely went backward. And then they broke the everlasting covenant. This is the ultimate charge. The covenant which God established to last forever was treated as disposable. We don't need that. It ain't do us no good. They act as if the mutual promises were null and void. We ain't under that. That's the old law, shattering the very foundation of their existence as a holy nation. The covenant is what sets them aside to be a holy nation. And they didn't want it. They want to be like the other nation. That's why they sought out just like what the Canaanites did. Number 3, profound contempt for the relationship. They had a contempt for the relationship, the covenant relationship. By consistently acting as if God had made no promises and given no commands, Israel demonstrated the deepest form of relational contempt. They act like God didn't say nothing. He ain't make no promises, no commands. He didn't command you to be holy. He didn't command you to follow his statutes and laws and be different. Set aside the Sabbath day and be holy. He didn't do none of that stuff. That's just something Moses made up. So they went around here acting like it was really Moses that came down with all that stuff. 'Cause we didn't see. They live entirely according to their own free will, dismissing the following: God's authority. They ignored the ultimate sovereignty that created and commanded them. God's memory. They forgot the miraculous redemption from Egypt that had established the covenant in the first place, according to Deuteronomy chapter 5, verse 6. God's love. They rejected the exclusive, persistent, and loyal love that God had perpetually offered, exchanging it for empty, man-made idols. And our people do it today. This disregard of the core covenant vow ultimately led to the catastrophic withdrawal of God's presence and the exile, fulfilling the curse of the broken marriage and the dissolved relationship. Most I told you it was going to happen. He told you it was going to happen. Let's talk about the inevitable consequence. Exile and what we going through today. Exile and desolation. And it's going to be in Leviticus. So we on the final leg. Talking about the consequences of all of this. Leviticus 26 and 33. Deuteronomy 28 and 36, 2 Kings 17, 5 and 6, and 2 Kings 17 and 18, and Chronicles 36 and 21, and 2 Kings 25, 8 through 11. We're going to talk about the curses being fulfilled on them. Most I told them, we're going to go through exile. We're going to put them out. We're going to vomit them. Loss of land, loss of identity. The ultimate catastrophic consequence of Israel's sustained spiritual infidelity their contempt for the holy, unique nature of Yah was the fulfillment of the curses detailed in the covenant law, culminated in Assyrian and Babylonian exiles, then a final Roman exile and the desolation of the land. This was the tragic culmination of despising the Holy One, the loss of everything they cherished. Let's talk about the warnings of the covenant. The law, particularly in Leviticus chapter 26 and Deuteronomy chapter 28, we know about that, outlined a clear structure of blessings for obedience and severe curses for disobedience. These warnings were explicit and terrifying, focusing on the loss of divine protection, agricultural failure, disease, and military defeat. The final, most severe penalty was exile and the desolation of the land. The Most High told them in Leviticus chapter 26, verse 33, what was going to happen. He told them, and I will scatter you among the nations, and I will draw out the sword after you, and your land shall be a desolation, and your cities shall be a waste. Leviticus 26 and 33. He told them that, and they didn't believe it. They didn't believe it. First up, the northern kingdom, Assyrian exile. The northern kingdom of Israel provided the first fulfillment of these curses. Their systematic adoption of idolatry, corruption, and the rejection of prophets like Amos and Hosea led directly to their fall, their downfall. They didn't think it was going to happen. And then Judah saw it happen and did the same thing too. The same thing. They just didn't know how to do it right. So the inevitable end, in 722 BCE, the Assyrian Empire besieged and destroyed the capital, Samaria, and deported the skilled and elite of the population into Assyrian territory, according to 2 Kings 17, 5 and 6. Most I wasn't playing. The consequence that led. Talk about that. The consequence. Get that off. This event led to the disappearance of the 10 northern tribes from history. Their identity was absorbed and lost among the nations. It sure was. But I identified where they were. And my lesson that I talked about, did the Jews steal our culture? Demonstrating the curse of being scattered and losing their covenant status. 2 Kings 17 and 18 summarizes the divine judgment. Therefore, Yah was very angry with Israel and removed them out of his sight. And then none was left but the tribe of Yehudah only. And then they saw all the evil and wickedness, decided that I'm going to do it too. It's going to be different with me. So they next up, talking about the Babylonian exile. 2 different nations. 2 different outcomes. Because at least from the Babylonian exile, they came back. The southern kingdom. Then they got kicked out later on. Can't win for losing. The southern kingdom of Yehudah, despite witnessing the north faith, failed to fully repent. They didn't think they did nothing wrong. This continued idolatry, as seen in Ezekiel's vision, and the persistent injustice culminated in a final decisive judgment against them. The Most High said, you know what? I'm just going to get rid of all y'all out of my sight. I just can't do it anymore. The loss of the sanctuary. In 586 BCE, the Babylonian Empire, led by Nebuchadnezzar, destroyed Jerusalem, including the temple, the very place whose existence they believed guaranteed their safety. This physically affirmed that the glory of Yah had departed. And the final curse, the remaining population, let's talk about them. The Most High told them what's going to happen. The remaining population was forcibly marched to Babylon in 2 Kings 25, verses 8 through 11. This fulfilled. I think it's supposed to be this fulfill. Yep. This fulfilled. The final curse, the remaining population was forcibly marched to Babylon, 2 Kings 25, verses 8 through 11. This fulfilled a curse of you and your king being led. Let me put it up here. Being led to a nation that neither you nor your fathers have known, according to Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 36. And we have the desolation on this segment. Finally, the desolation of the land. The land itself suffered the final intended consequence of the curse. Forced rest. The Most High said it's going to rest. It didn't rest when you were here, but it's going to rest now. So the exile ensured that the land finally received the rest it was denied during Israel's period of corruption. So 2 Chronicles chapter 36, verse 21 talks about it. And it reads that the land kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years while the people were in exile, making up for the Sabbaths that were profaned. The ultimate loss of Israel and what we're going through today. The ultimate loss. This desolation represented the loss of everything they cherished: the temple, the place of divine presence, Jerusalem, the capital of their identity, and the land. Here. And the land, the basis of their existence as a holy nation. They lost it all. They lost the temple, their identity, and the land. The covenant was honored, not by blessing, but by the relentless enforcement of the curses. Think about that. The covenant was honored by the curses, not by the blessings. The enforcement of the curses fulfilled the covenant against a disobedient people, confirming God's unique power and holiness. The covenant was fulfilled through the curses. Go figure. Make that make sense. Had all the blessings, but we couldn't fulfill it through that. We had to do the curses, because that's what was good to us. The scars of contempt, a remnant's anguish. I'm going to put that up here. The scars of contempt. Take the other one off. The scars of contempt, a remnant's anguish. We're going to be in Lamentations. Chapter 1, verses 1 through 3, 5 and 16, Ezra 9, 6 and 7. We're going to talk about the cry from exile. First on the list, recognizing shame and guilt. The catastrophic fall of Jerusalem and the subsequent exile in Babylon finally shattered the delusion of safety and immunity that Israel had maintained for centuries. Stripped of their temple, their king, and their land, the surviving faithful remnant were forced into a devastating moment of introspection, recognizing their own shame and guilt as the true cause of their disaster. You have to own it, Israel. You have to own it. Lamenting the loss and acknowledging the sin. We're going to go to the book of Lamentations for that. And it speaks about, I guess I could put on the screen instead of going there. Yeah, I'll put on there instead of going. The book of Lamentations. Start the first verse. Alas, the city once full of people now sits alone. The prominent lady among the nations has become a widow. The princess who once ruled the provinces has become a forced laborer. So the princess who once ruled the provinces has become a forced laborer. She don't sit on top no more. She on the bottom. That's what that means. The Most High said we will be. She weeps bitterly at night. Tears stream down her cheeks. She has no one to comfort her among all her lovers. All her friends have betrayed her. So when Israel went down, Egypt turned their back on them. They would wait for Egypt to come to deliver them. And the Most High told them through Jeremiah, That Egypt's not going to come and deliver you. And they didn't believe it. That's why they want to constantly punish Jeremiah, want to kill him, put him in jail and everything. Jeremiah told them what's going to happen. They didn't believe it. They have become her enemies. These same people she trusted in have become her enemies. Yehuda has departed into exile under affliction and harsh oppression. She lives among the nations. She has found no resting place. And we haven't found a resting place as of today. And we won't find one here in our enemy's land. Our forefathers didn't do it in Babylon exile, and we won't do it here. No resting place. And we don't get it. It's because our forefathers sinned and we're still sinning. All who pursued her overtook her in narrow straits. Lamentations chapter 1 verses 1 through 3. The profound agony and recognition of sin are powerfully expressed in the book of Lamentation, traditionally attributed to the prophet Jeremiah, mourning the destruction of Jerusalem. The laments move past blaming external enemies and turn inward, accepting the justice of God's judgment. The crown has fallen from our head. We're all kings and queens. Woe to us, for we have sinned. Lamentations chapter 5, verse 16. The phrase, the crown has fallen from our head. Let's talk about that. This phrase encapsulates the total loss of glory, sovereignty, and dignity. The crown represents the Davidic monarchy, the priesthood, and the temple. All institutions that have been crushed due to their spiritual contempt. I mean, evil. And we don't get it. Still going through evil, and we still don't get it. Woe to us, for we have sinned. This is the honest admission of guilt. They finally understood that the curses of the covenant were fulfilled not through God's capriciousness, but through their own transgressions of the laws and the breaking of the everlasting covenant. That's how the covenant was fulfilled, through their own transgression of the laws and the breaking of the everlasting covenant. The pain of the exile became the lens through which they saw their spiritual state. Talk about Ezra, and we'll be finished. Shame at the continued sin, Ezra. Even after initial waves of return from the Babylonian exile, the tragic cycle of spiritual compromise threatened to restart. The leaders, particularly the priest and scribe Ezra, faced the reality of the community repeating old sins, especially the critical covenant violation of intermarriage with the surrounding people. Ezra told them, after all they did, they're going to come back and do the same thing all over again. Didn't learn a lesson whatsoever. Ezra's confession before Yah reveals the deep scarring shame left by generations of contempt. When he opened up to the Most High and told them, "Oh, my Elohim, I am ashamed and embarrassed to lift up my face to you, my God, for our iniquities have piled up higher than our heads, and our guilt has grown up to the heavens. From the days of our fathers until this very day, our guilt has been great." At least he owning it. Some of our people don't even want to own it. They think they ain't did nothing wrong. Because of our iniquities, we, along with our kings and priests, have been delivered over by the local kings to sword, captivity, plunder, and embarrassment, right up to the present time. Ezra chapter 9, verses 6 and 7. And we today are delivered over to sword, captivity, and jail. The sword is the gun, and embarrassment right up to the present time. Because the way these women and men dress embarrass us. The way the children behave embarrass us. Right today, they build prisons for our children and make money off of them, make merchandise of them. This confession is crucial because it demonstrates a humble consciousness. The people finally acknowledged that the historical contempt for God's holiness had established a spiritual legacy of guilt that they carried even after returning to the land. Fear of relapse. Ezra recognized that their recent sins, violating the law that prohibited intermarriage with non-converts and forbidden nations, were precisely the sins that led to their earlier exiles. The scarring left by generations of contempt was not only a historical memory, but an active, inherited propensity to break faith. So the experience of exile and a subsequent confession cemented the understanding of the tragic culmination of their spiritual contempt that was the loss of everything, and the only hope for a future lay in genuine national repentance driven by deep shame and the resolute rejection of past sins. Conclusion: the enduring holiness. Hallelujah. We return to the stark declaration what Isaiah had said earlier. And what is that? Isaiah 1 and 4, when he said, they have forsaken Yah. They have despised the Holy One of Israel. This is more than a historical indictment. It is a timeless revelation of God's character and humanity's enduring struggle. We have witnessed what? How Israel despised God's name, his name and presence through idolatry and empty ritual. How they despised his laws and statutes through injustice, moral corruption, and Sabbath breaking. His prophets put that out here. His prophets through arrogant rejection of his word. And finally, his land. Through defilement and spiritual betrayal. So they defile his land and covenant through defilement and spiritual betrayal. So in essence, when we talked about his name and presence, his laws and statutes, his prophets, his land and covenant, and the unchanging truth is, despite Israel's contempt, Yah remains the Holy One of Israel. He still is the Holy One of Israel. He will always be the Holy One of Israel. And we are Israel, not the Jews over there. He never had a people called Jews. Never had a people called Christians or Muslims or Islam. Always Israel. And we are Israel. So despite all of our contempt toward him, he still remains faithful to us. He still remains our Holy One. our God, our Elohim, our rock. His holiness is not diminished by human rebellion. Just because we rebelling, think we know it all, we more righteous than God. We have our own precepts, man's laws we want to live by. It is revealed in his righteous judgment and his faithful preservation of a remnant. He always have his servant speaking to his people, calling his people out, returning his people back to him, even when they rebel and fight against it. God is faithful. He is faithful to you, Israel. He loves you. He don't want you on the cold on a Sabbath day or eating cold food on a Sabbath day. What kind of cruel God is that? You can eat hot food and be warm through the week, but on a Sabbath day, you got to be cold and hungry. I start thinking about this loving God. God is loving. He loves us. Think about it. Why would he want you to do that? First thing you're going to do, you're going to complain about it. You're going to turn away from him and he do something evil like that. I think that's cruel. Because man want to label it as work. They making God cruel. Making him a cruel God. And they going to pay for that. God loves Israel. Even when they rebel against him, he's still sending his prophets. They murder his prophets. We murder the prophets now and murder his messengers through what? Words. You'll sit up on these lying teachers and preachers all day long. These dumb dogs that can't bark. That cause the people to err. But we don't want to hear the truth. And then when the truth comes, it's so strange. She's just making it up. Or he just making it up because you don't understand you've been taught lies for so long. You have to let go of all these lies. You got to be willing to hear the truth. The Most High loves you. He wants you to hear the truth. He wants to show you how much he loves you. But we rebelled against him in the wilderness, rebelled against him in the land, and still rebelling. Even in the depths of our despising, his ultimate purpose is not annihilation, but restoration. We have to return to him. A future where hearts will be changed and his statutes truly written within them, according to Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 33, and Ezekiel chapter 36, verses 26 and 27. So let's talk about challenging the human heart. And how we going to do that? Challenging the human heart. The ancient stories forces us to look inward. We have to look inward, Israel. Where in our lives, in our own societies, do we subtly or overtly despise the Holy One of Israel to cause us to rebel against him? Do we substitute convenience for worship? Because, I just can't do that today. I'm tired. I just go without me. I just can't hear it right now. I'm going through something. Or do we choose fleeting pleasures over enduring righteousness? Because I want to be happy. I'll make myself happy. It's all about me right now. See, I've been going through something. Can't I be happy? Why can't I be happy? I want to do something for myself. I'm tired. Always something I got to do. That's because I told you, man. That's the precept of man. If you always bogged down, angry, alienated, or do we scoff at divine warnings in favor of our own wisdom by leaning to our own understanding? The lesson from Israel is eternal. And I'm going to put this eternal lesson up here so we can have it in our memory. This is an eternal lesson. To despise the Holy One is to invite ultimate desolation and destruction. Again, the lesson from Israel is eternal. To despise the Holy One is to invite ultimate desolation and destruction. It happened to our forefathers in the wilderness, happened to our forefathers in the land. And it's happening to us right today. That's why we are being destroyed. Among all the nations, we've been destroyed. Look into our neighborhoods where the majority of us live, being destroyed. Look at our children. No respect. Contempt. We have contempt for the Most High. They have contempt for us. Contrary. We live in contrary to the Most High. So we suffering. Out of all the nations, the Most High said that will happen. We have to return back to him, Israel. Return back to the Most High Yah. Now, time for question and answers. I'll be right back. And I'm back. Look at the comments. Gonna close out. Shalom, Kodesh, Quadashim, peace and blessings to you all. Kodesh, Quadashim is set apart ones. God of the Hebrews, Shalom Aleichem, Miss Paka, 12 tribes strong. Shalom, Kol Yisrael. Many blessings. Kol me all. And I just said, shalom. All questions and comments will be addressed after the lesson during the question and answer segment, which is now. And it's all good. Say shalom, Yisrael. And Rivka. I didn't know she had slipped in. Say shalom, Mora. Shalom, Rivka. Jonathan Evans. I read his message earlier. Shalom, family, with much love, giving all praises, the highest honor, and the greatest glory. Praise the Almighty Yah, the Elohim of Abraham, Yitzchak, we and Yaakov. We still need him. Like yesterday, family. Shalom, shalom, Jonathan. Shalom, family, Todd Williams. I said shalom at Jonathan Evans, Rabbi, for consistently supporting the channel. Many blessings to you. Shalom at Rivka. Toda Rabbi for the support, and may the blessings of Yah rest upon you. Shalom, it is all good. Toda for the continued support, and many blessings to you as well. And shalom at Todd Williams. Thanks for joining the broadcast. Many blessings to you. Anyone have any questions or comments before I close out? I will try to be back. I will be back. Y'all willing? This week, I'm going to try to do 3. Try to do one the day commonly called Tuesday, and come back on the 6th day. I'm going to talk about covenant versus culture. And then I think the next one might be the diseases of Egypt. But nevertheless, I will see what my spirit leads me to. But in the meantime, in between time, if no one have any questions or further comments, without further ado, I will close out and say a prayer. I look forward to seeing you guys later this week. I'm going to wait and see if anybody have any comments before I close out. I don't want to close out too fast. But if they don't, I will be saying the closing prayer. So no comments, no questions. Well, shalom, shalom. Torah Rabah for you guys joining. And I will see you later this week. Out of here. Shalom, shalom. I give all honor, all glory, and all praises to you, Most High God, also known as the power of Abraham, the power of Yitzchak, and the power of Yaakov, whose name was changed to Israel, who also is the Elohim of our forefathers, the Holy One of Israel, the God of the Hebrews. As this Bible study has come to a close, I thank and praise you for giving us the opportunity to learn, the capacity to understand, and the willingness to increase our knowledge of your laws through the testimonies of your prophets, the ancient messengers of our forefathers, the opportunity to teach your word, which are your laws, and for us to be a light and to delight in your laws, that if a man walks therein, he should live. I pray that you protect us, guide us, and strengthen us with all the necessary tools to encounter our trials and tribulations each day. I thank you for the knowledge we obtain in class, and ask that you bless us to be able to impart our knowledge for the benefit of others as we serve you. Help us to be prepared for the challenges we face each day, to be open to giving of oneself to further your service, to be responsible in all we do, to be accepting of our differences, to be kind in our thoughts and words, to be aware of our talents that can be used to glorify you in righteousness, and to help us to be the best possible version of ourselves. I also thank you for all those in attendance. It's all good. Jonathan Evans, Rifqua, and Todd Williams, as well as those unseen and unknown faces who appear on my screen as numbers, as well as all those who will see this lesson in the future. You who has imparted me with this knowledge to bring forth unto them, I pray that you continuously Bless me with the skills, wisdom, knowledge, and understanding of your word, which is needed to teach this Bible study, and that you bless all of us exponentially for setting aside time each week to study your holy scriptures. May you continue to bless and guide us as we leave this class, and may the things we learned remain in our day-to-day activities. I thank you for all the blessings, mercies, benefits, and grace that you have bestowed upon all of your servants, even the children of Israel. For truly you've been good to Israel, for your mercies, Almighty Yah, your mercies endures forever, and I thank you for them. Praise the mighty Yah, for he is worthy, most worthy, definitely worthy to be praised. Selah.
Putting God back into our relationships, weekly Bible study series with more about Shiva on Thursdays at 7 to 8:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. The first week, the Law and the Testimony, the Relationship series. The second week, Learn Not the Ways of the Nations. The third week, Jewels of Wisdom, the blind leading the blind, the leaders cause the people to err, and the fourth week, Jewels of Wisdom Remix 2.0, Bible study in 42 minutes or less. Thanks for watching. Shalom Aleichem. This has been a 12 Tribes Strong presentation.